Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the City of Madeira Beach Board of Commissioners Workshop Meeting. Today is April 22nd, and the time is 2 p.m. Would the City Clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Lister?
Here.
Vice Mayor Hodges?
Here.
Commissioner Poe?
Here.
Commissioner Shantz?
Here.
Mayor Palladino?
Here. First up, discussion on undergrounding utilities, presentation by CPWG, Mr. Steve Tart.
Mayor, maybe I can share mics today, I think. If I can introduce this to the floor. Steve Tart from CPWG has been our acting engineer on this project, probably one of the biggest ones that we'll end up doing. We gave you a presentation maybe 6 to 8 months ago, and what we want to do is update you on where we're at, why we're doing what we're doing, and basically get some buy-in from the Board of Commissioners to keep proceeding, and then discuss the funding for it. And the funding, I think you're all aware of, that we would use the Gulf Boulevard beautification dollars to do this. At the current state of things, we can only afford to do this in a fashion that Steve will present, but what we'll do is eliminate everything that goes east and west, and there will be some power lines with new ornate poles going north and south, but it will certainly clean up the facade. And if you remember, we kind of all agreed on that because of a number of things. One is that you have to get a 100% participation of everyone along Gulf Boulevard. There may be assessment changes, improvements to properties, sometimes drives up the assessment, and people were looking at that in a negative fashion, so on and so forth. So with that, I'll hand it off to Steve. This is very interactive, in fact, and if anybody's in the audience, feel free to ask questions too, but I think as we go along, don't hesitate to ask questions as we go through, and then at the end we can have a kind of a final discussion so staff knows where to go from here.
I'm going to move. And commissioners, if y'all want to. Yeah. Let them roll.
Mayor, if that's too close, you can just roll your chair right next to Steve if you want. See better from 100 feet. I think if we just jack the lights up.
It'll get brighter on the next slides. Well, thanks for having me here this afternoon. So as the city manager said, we've been working on this over a number of months and trying to figure out different ways that we could work on the undergrounding of the public utilities. So what we're going to talk about a little bit today is a little bit of the project history, the kind of the current scope that we're proposing to do, a little update on the FDOT improvements, talking about the undergrounding itself, a little bit of phasing, construction phasing, when things would actually happen, how we would communicate that with the citizens and yourselves, and then questions at the end. So project history, I would say it's probably been close to a year where we've had a couple small work orders to kind of look and see what it would cost to actually underground all along Gulf Boulevard, Madeira Way, and 150th. And when we came to the conclusion of that price, it was somewhere in the ballpark of about $9 million. And so once we figured that out, we were like, okay, we're going to need to look at some other alternatives based on the funding we'll discuss later on. One of the other factors is Pinellas County is looking to open cut Gulf Boulevard, the majority of the length of the city, to potentially do some utilities upgrade work.
Steve, can you, just for the benefit of everybody here, so FDOT is doing a version of Gulf Boulevard coming this August, I believe. The let is scheduled probably for the next 30 days.
Actually, they've done the letting. Letting's
okay.
out, and we're walking the project with them May 15th.
Okay.
And they'll have a pre-construction meeting somewhere around that area.
Okay, and so that's to finish the islands. And,
yeah, that's to do the safety improvements.
Safety improvements, does that include a new top to Gulf Boulevard, or just the islands?
No, it'll be the islands and an overlay.
Okay.
And then once we get done with the undergrounding and we figure out what Pinellas County really wants to do, then we will come back and as a LAP project through the city, which is where the city oversees it, the FDOT funds it, then we'll come back and do a full mill and resurface along. It's about 2/3 of the city. So you can see it's not through Johns Pass, and it's not from I think it stops at 100. I think it stops at 150, if I recall. Current scope. What we're looking to do right now is looking at the budget that's available in the Big C fund for the penny for Pinellas, the Big C Fund, where they give you golf beautification money, is undergrounding all the east and west wires across Gulf Boulevard, replacing the wood poles because a lot of them are bent and have other issues. So we'll do that down the trunk line down the west side. On the east side, looking to replace the mongoose lights with a better looking fixture similar to what is in the new light poles in front of Archibald Park. Right now, we think there's potentially enough budget to actually underground from Ocean Sands north to 155th and kind of finish that north leg of the city where we've done Archibald Park already. So get the condos on the south and then up through 155th.
And you've met with Ocean Sands and
We've met
Serena?
with Ocean Sands and we met with the Sereno, and they were both favorable. And actually, the Sereno is looking to see, they were both favorable to grant utility easements. And Sereno is trying to figure out if they have to go to a full vote of their full membership or if they can do that as the effective. Of course, we have the safety improvements that we just talked about and then the overlay. FDOT has added part to the project for the millinery surface. They've adding a new signal at 140th, so they're going to get it off the wires and do the big metal mass.
I was going to ask that we just talked about that at the department head meeting today. So are those wires, the purpose of those wires just to hang that light, or are those
Yes.
wires have
Yeah,
a purpose
no.
other than that?
No, those are to hang the lights across 140th,
So
and that's why
those-
they're going to upgrade.
Those wires would be eliminated and we'd have like post-type stopping lights or something like that?
No,
or-
you're going to have a mass like you have on the other intersection. So it's going to be that big white mass that goes from the edge of the intersection that hangs
It
over.
hangs over?
Right, so they'll do those to kind of keep the same throughout the city. And then, of course, the millinery surface, there you go, so it's from 131st to 150th, so the project limits for FDOT. This I just wanted to put in here, so this is what is designed for this is what's gonna be your roadway when they're completely done with the millinery surface. So as you can see, the big difference they're adding is they're doing 4-foot bike lanes, and they're actually, I think you have 12-foot lanes now. So they're gonna go to 10-foot lanes with this, from 12-foot, and then add a 4-foot bike lane. That kind of gives you guys an idea of what it's going to look like when it's all said and done. This is just a shot of, once again, we mentioned earlier, so this slide's a little irrelevant now, but of course, upgrading the light signal at 140th. I apologize for the pictures, it looks great on it. So the undergrounding again, so this is what will actually be undergrounding as the undergrounding for the project, which again is the east-west wires. That'll be all of them from, it's already done in Johns Pass, so it'll be from Johns Pass north. So anywhere there's an east-west wire, that will go underground. Of course, 155th to Ocean Sands condos, what we want to do, replace the wood transmission poles along the whole west side, and then, of course, upgrade to a nicer fixture along the east side for the mongoose lights to those similar arches.
Who's responsible for maintaining those equipment in place?
Those will be, all the poles will be FDOT, or excuse me, Duke Energy.
Of course, painting.
Yeah, maintenance, all maintenance will be on them. Construction phasing, so FDOT has let and awarded the bid for the safety measures portion of this. They are working on now setting a pre-construction meeting. As I told the city manager, we're doing a walkthrough with the project manager and his supervisor on May 15th with our engineers. And once they get that set, I'm guessing late summer is when they'll probably start out here. Get those
I think
rolling.
the email that I saw, I think to you, was estimated early August, late
Right.
to mid-August.
Right. And then, of course, that'll be obviously here in 2014. And then the undergrounding, what we'll have to do is get a binding estimate from Duke Energy and Bright House. We have to work on some utility easements on the north end, and then do some design work to get stuff across the road. And of course, that'll all happen 2014, 2015. And it's depending on funding and where we can, because we're waiting, the Big C funds over a number of years. Depending on what we can do with that, will drive how quickly we can underground it. So it could go anywhere from maybe 18 to 24 months, it's all done, out to 2017, 2018. That's how funding happens. This is the basic costs for for all things included. And I just did it in the majors. The wood poles would actually include the mongoose on the other side. But basically, the east-west lines, 150th to 155th in the wood poles. So doing all that would be 3.1. I think the allocation for the city was 3.3 for the Big C, but we've already done in front of Archibald, which is already taken out of that fund. And as you see, the key points about this is, it's the Big C fund that would pay for this. And then we also will look at some potential cost-sharing opportunities if Pinellas County truly is going to dig up their utility. And if they do that, then we'll come back and have a discussion about putting conduit in for future all the way, because it would be minimal at this point to do that, but I just throw that out there. There's nothing definite about that. Pinellas County's been in contact with us, and so we'll have those discussions and raise how that. Communication, obviously, city staff has overall control of the project. As a consultant, we direct the project and hopefully solve problems. As the projects continue going along, we'll do things with the newspaper, and we'll help the city keep the website updated with what's going on. That's where we are at. And throw Dave out there. But if you have any real questions, you can ask Dave. The question I can answer.
Is that they were letting the safety crosswalks, they've been doing that up and down Gulf Boulevard. 5 years.
Right.
They already have a contract in place to do that. They individualize.
No,
every city.
FDOT, they do everything on a competitive basis.
Every city.
Every city. Actually, not every city, each project.
Yeah.
So if they were going to divide your city into two pieces, if it was two separate projects, it would be two separate lettings, two separate competitions.
Steve, real quick on the, when they're doing the overlaying, are they going to go ahead and lay out the bike lanes at that time? Or is that going to be the final project after they mill?
I don't know.
Okay.
I will ask that question and get back to you.
The emails that I understood was when they did the overlaying that they were going to lay out the bike lanes
I
at
would
that
assume
time.
it would make sense that they would, but since
Okay.
I don't know for a fact, I won't tell you absolutely.
And then just piggybacking on Commissioner Lister's question on the islands, and that was my understanding. I think both sides of Madeira Beach was two different contractors, engineers, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But the letting on the main project has already taken place.
The letting for the safety improvement, when we get to the full
Right.
mill and resurface, that will be another contract. And we will actually drive that process from the city, not from FDOT.
Okay.
So they will give us the money to do all that work, and we'll do the bid, put the bid package together, we'll make the selection. They'll be part of that team, but the city will be driving the train at that point.
Right. And if, Mr. City Manager, if you don't mind, I have a question for the Finance Director on that end. And I believe Steve was correct. It was $3.3 million was the original amount that Madeira Beach was awarded from the
That's
pennies
correct.
from Pinellas and the Gulf Beautification Fund. And out of that, we've already used $125,000 or $150,000. That was for the Archibald project, correct?
Correct.
Was the last, because I know we've rolled through maybe 2 cycles now on being able to get money. Are we at the point where Madeira Beach is about $1 million that is available funds
We
minus
rolled
what we
the f-
used so
We rolled
far?
the funds forward from last year, so we did one rollover, and that increased our amount for this year to $659,000.
Okay, $659,000.
And then it's scheduled from now until fiscal year 19 is how they have it allocated.
So if we started rolling the project, let's say the commission decided to start rolling this project, as soon as possible to roll it and get it done in 18 to 24 months. If we rolled it and started it using the portions of funds that we have available to us now, if in a payment, could we roll our second payment before we thought about getting, and then not maybe having to get a bonded loan, but getting a regular bank loan to pay for the last amount, and then the money's being poured into us from the county after that? Is that possible?
Yeah, I think, that it's probably not realistic to go about the project doing it $650,000 at a time. It's probably much more realistic that we would want to get all the money up front, and then as Pinellas County makes their revenue available, we would use that to pay off some type of short-term financing mechanism. Usually what cities use in this situation is just a revenue anticipation note. It's very common. It's probably what some of the other cities on the beach have already done. And I've got some of the framework for that laid out at this point, so that's
Okay.
certainly an option.
I think it comes down to timing and when it all starts, but, if we get delayed for any reason or whatever the case may be, and we're into our third or fourth or fifth rollover, that would change. But if we're gonna go at this as quickly as possible, and I think I would recommend that to take advantage of this, I think Vince is exactly right. We would do some short-term borrow, put the $3 million up front, get it done, and then pledge those revenues from the county for what we can, a loan or a bond at what we can get it for is a pretty good deal.
And that makes sense, Mr. City Manager, and I'd like to hear from the rest of the commission, because as it goes on, construction prices only go up. I know the city started talking about undergrounding the power lines about a decade ago, yeah, and it's gone from $1 million to almost $7 million a mile, so it's something the city and the commission looks at, so.
CPWG's put a lot of time and effort and probably a lot of resources that we didn't have to pay for to get us to this point. I was shocked to see that we could do what he just presented for that price tag, based off of the the Coconut Telegraph numbers you hear about what it costs to bury the utility. The problem is when you go, you know, if we were to look at this in totality to bury everything, you have to, you know, easements every X amount of, you know, feet, and so you're going up and down Gulf Boulevard, not only asking for easements, but also saying that we are going to require you, or the city would have to pay for an upgraded service change on their building or home or condo or whatever the case may be, which, you know, if you look at the Indian Shores model, I think that took several years just to get that done. So I think that this is a good start. You can always bury the utility at any point when funding becomes available or we run out of projects to do, but I think when you look at, you know, some of what we're doing, it just eliminating that east-west.
No, it cleans up the city quite a bit.
Oh, Lord, I think it'll be a huge change.
I think that's it.
Steve, the one thing that I can request is between you, me, and Vince, we need to get something into the committee to evaluate that, some sort of short narrative. I think a page will do it.
Okay.
If you can prep that and kind of walk them through. The one thing that they asked for was some sort of timetable or
Sure.
timeline.
Sure.
And then I think between Vince and I and the mayor, we can move that up the chains and get that approval, and then it's
Okay.
ready to go.
Vince, one other question for you. In the process, and I saw how it worked for Indian Shores, their turnaround seemed to be 2 to 3 weeks when they went ahead and got their funds into the county. The county was very responsive and very quick writing back the funds. Has that worked for us on the Archibald project where they?
We haven't submitted our invoices yet to the county for the Archibald because we're just waiting for that
We
one last
have
wire to
one
come
wire
down.
to
Oh, okay.
deal with.
Yeah.
But I expect it to be a very clean process. We've got everything laid out on our end, so it shouldn't be complicated.
And Mayor Lawrence had the process pretty easy set up for everybody along the beaches, so I can't imagine we would have the same.
No one's complained about not getting a check back when they submitted their expenses. So.
That being said, in your presentation, Steve, you had Duke Energy and Bright House, but that includes Verizon.
Verizon's pretty much underground already.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were progressive.
Okay.
So, yeah, they're pretty much on the island, they're underground.
My last question, the 58-foot that you had, that's existing. Right?
That's correct.
Taking our existing curb
They
to
are.
curb.
They are staying curb to curb. No, not at this point.
All right.
Actually, well, not widening, they're gonna do some, it looks like they got a little bit of stormwater work they're gonna do on some inlets and things, but that'll be very local around where the stormwater inlets are. So they may tear up to replace and then redo the sidewalk. But the width of the sidewalks are staying the same, just like it is, them shrinking lanes to make your bike pass.
Steve, is that a binding contract, or will we still have to go out and pay to have Duke Energy
No,
give
we're
us a
gonna
binding
we'll
contract?
have to get a binding contract.
Do you just,
The reason we went with those numbers is Archibald helped, and we're also doing some
Right.
work with City of St. Pete Beach.
okay,
So we've gotten a pretty good estimate so between those two, it made it very easy, and a much more
Okay.
accurate estimate from them, because they tend to shoot high on purpose, so they cover themselves, and then it comes back lower, so.
okay, thank you.
But-
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sorry.
Did Duke Energy ever come and remove all the when I was in there, we tried to maybe something, I can't tell you how many poles are out there. You know, a double pole of no use.
Right.
We were on that project, but I don't know.
I think that most of them were, and going along with this project, we're going to require the other utilities that are on all these poles to clean up their act. I mean, you drive down and you see big loops of wire hanging from different poles. You know, we'll require them to maintain that and clean that all up, which will help also.
And we're getting wood poles, why not cement?
No, we're going to change from wood to cement.
Wonderful,
Yeah, the idea is to get rid of all the wood poles.
wonderful, that'll be wonderful, thank you.
Mhm.
Just so they get that project
Yeah.
completed, like pulling teeth.
And Commissioner Johnson, I know there's another member of the TDC that's sitting in here, but I know there's discussion going on with the additional penny being able to come up. There's different talks of also getting out there more beautification dollars for out on the beaches. If I'm correct about that, Bill. I know we're just in a discussion, but it is out there in the sunshine.
Steve, I had a question, I just wanted to ask you. When you were showing the picture of the cars and also the bike route and everything, in some areas we have the medium strips with the crosswalks. Is that going to change in size or anything? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Next, item B, discussion on Fantasy Planet building listing lease. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and City Attorney Trask chime in as needed. The lease on the building is expiring, and so this is your chance to make adjustments or changes or do what you see fit. From a staff standpoint, a couple of things can be said. Is one, we have a great tenant, never have a problem getting paid, that kind of thing, which is sometimes half the battle. He keeps the place up nice. It's a lease currently where there was a slight escalator, Vince, I believe 2.5% per year. And as far as staff is concerned, we're okay with that type of escalator if you would like to proceed further like that. One thing was that we'd like to have included, Vince had some concerns about putting a deadline in there for the payment of taxes and insurance and stuff like that, just kind of a housekeeping issue. The one issue that I wanted to bring up, and Vice Mayor Hodges spoke to me about it yesterday, and Pat Shantz may have some insight in on this, is the 2 parking spots that we allow him up front. They're not in the lease. And so I would imagine that was some sort of addendum or whatever back in the day. But if the purpose of those spots is for deliveries, those spots aren't doing the trick, because whatever size truck is coming ain't pulling into those 2 spots. I've seen a lot of frustrated visitors and whoever driving down there pull halfway in because there's a little orange cone next to the curb, and then they pull out. If it's for the purpose of employee parking, I think giving him a spot or 2 isn't a problem, but those 2 spots might not be the spots to give him. And so I think most of our conversation from a staff standpoint centered around those parking spots and whether or not you wanted to just pull them. Again, from a delivery standpoint, there's no semi or even half-size truck that's pulling into there. And I can't imagine that he gets deliveries every day. And if he's like everybody else, they're getting deliveries at 8 in the morning or 9 in the morning when the boulevard is pretty much empty. So I don't know, Commissioner Shantz, do you know anything about those spots and how they got thrown into the mix?
Memory serves me correctly. That was a complimentary thing because there was no parking. And it was not even, it didn't even look like it does today, cleaned up behind that way. There is just absolutely no place to park. When we took the parking lot, bought the building, then we certainly had a parking lot.
Yeah.
We started redeveloping the parking lot, as you see it today. And it just seemed like the only place to put him was 2 parking places right in front at that particular moment.
Yeah.
Now, Moshe has always cooperated with that. He brings a lot of stuff in. Friends of the buyers. That's probably why we have too many trucks and a lot coming by. Yes. But I don't think there'd be any problem with it. I have to get him some parking.
Yeah.
Spaces, 2 spaces somewhere else, maybe in the parking lot.
Yeah, I think, either in that parking lot or it was former Vice Mayor Lister that discovered that we have a couple of spots over by that surf shop that kind of just got thrown into the mix there, and we've signed that. And I mean, it's not as close as obviously as the 2 front spots, but they're rarely used, and I'm wondering if that might make some sense. So if the commission wants to proceed, I think, if you've got faith in staff and the ability, I'll speak to Moshe, and maybe Pat, you can help me out there and see what works with him. But I think the 2 spots on Village Boulevard don't make sense now, and that explains why it was done that way. A spot or 2 in the parking lot or further down by the VFW and the surf shop might make the most sense for us because they're underutilized spot, Dave loses his spot in John's Pass, but that's about it, so.
There is nobody there, and it's prime real estate for parking.
Right, right, right.
Now, behind that building, might be a lot of parking nowadays.
That's the
Pretty open.
VFW though, isn't it?
No, I don't think that alley behind belongs to you.
No?
But we need to give them some space because I'll tell you what's gonna happen, and I'm not gonna be down there during the battle. But what's gonna happen is those spaces taken away from the fence. Then he'll park at the Lizard, where they have like 3 or 4 parking spaces. And then we'll be having a battle between the tenants down there for parking.
Yeah. No, I think we gotta give them some parking.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it's those 2 spots. This is very consistent with what we did with the Snack Shack. They've got 2 spots for their vendors or employees and that kind of thing. So, if you guys are okay with it, and under those terms, if anybody wants to add anything to it, this is the time to tell Tom, because he'll be redeveloping the lease. But, for the city attorney, there's a clause that Vince wants included for a deadline for the payment of taxes and insurances and those types of things, the triple net part of the lease, Tom. And then, removing those 2 parking, well, it's not really removing it, because it's not in a lease. And so maybe that we would provide for 2 parking spots upon agreement between tenant and landlord. And then a new fee schedule, with a 2.5% escalator, if that number makes sense to everybody in the room. And then finally, the duration, and the tenant has asked for a 10-year lease. I believe I had spoken to Tom. That's as long as you can lock it up for. I think my recommendation to the Board of Commissioners would be create some flexibility for yourselves, even though we have an exceptional tenant. I would probably put a 5-year lease together with the right to renew for another 5 years, which gets them to the 10. I think the tenant will be okay with that. And then in 5 years, you've got some flexibility if a parking garage or who knows what we'll be talking about in 5 years becomes, something that you want to have some flexibility with. So if those terms are okay, we'll send Tom back with his homework and we'll draft a lease and then we'll approve it at the Board of Commissioners.
For consensus amongst the commission, go ahead and let the city attorney with the parking issue.
Way to fly. And I think that Shane, you and I should get down there together
Sure.
and talk about parking.
Well, and we'll bring Dave along, because what I want to do is, instead of, the miniature cones or whatever, I mean, we'll sign it, concessionaire parking or whatever. That's not, uncommon, and I think that that's fair. But again, just the placement, I don't think makes sense these days.
And Commissioner, I'm down there all the time. I see nobody parked in those 2 spots. I just see the cones.
They're rarely parked in.
Well, he parks in there all the time.
When he's there.
Second parking
Yeah.
space is for his wife. If she comes in another car.
Okay.
Most of the time I think they come together because they have their investment time in the afternoon. But you're right, you don't often see 2 cars in there, sometimes not.
And just 2 vehicles with family people coming to spend money in front of your shop, parking in front of there seems to be
I
a
saw
little more valuable to the city and the business owner.
I saw a car with Canadian plates. They just got out, moved those cones, and parked their car right there. So, I think if you want it bad enough, you're going to park in John's Pass. So, we'll get them hooked up. We'll just have to figure out what the right spot is. Anything additional? Anything else that we want in that lease, Commissioner Lister? I know you had.
We'll go to the bathroom.
He's busting my chops. At one time, we had thought, we'll give him an extended lease, but we're going to require him to build bathrooms. But on the north side of the building, Dave wants to, and we're going to renovate that little triangle park there. We've got grass that's been dying and dead there for a long time. We're going to maybe pave that and make that a little bit more pretty. And so we're going to leave the bathroom idea alone since we've got enough construction and balls in the air.
So there is
No
a
resist the parking places. I'm good with that.
Everybody's
As
good?
long as we can move.
Okay. City attorney, are you clear?
That was funny, in all those leases I read, there was never one word mentioned.
No, and that's.
That was a quiet little deal with me.
Well, but it makes sense, and it's not uncommon to provide that, but I know Amy took a read at it. I read it twice, and I'm like, Amy, I can't find it, and she said, well, Shane, it's
I
not
was
in there.
surprised that you said
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
All right, next update on short-term rentals, Commissioner Pope.
I had Amy print out some bullet points for you guys. Basically, I broke it down for problems and a solution. If you can pull that out, please.
Just name the ordinance. Where'd you go from here?
Yep.
In a paperclip group. There you go.
Ordinance.
I was trying to figure out how to break down 6 months of research and work into bullet points. Figure that one out. You guys all remember about October and November? We had a bunch of people in here talking about the short-term rentals and what they were doing. And I was the only commissioner that said, okay, let me look into it and see what's going on. Well, at the time I started this, I was only doing 3 websites, and we had 1,000. This month, we have 1,880 on 5 websites. Some are duplicates, some are condos. However, we have a condo association here today to give you an idea of what their condo has turned into. I have a member of the TDC here. I have Tampa Bay Chambers here, and Judy Taggart's here. I think they all have a little bit of something to say about this situation. The problem we're faced with is identifying and bringing into compliance with our existing codes and the loss of long-term neighbors that are now being replaced by short-term tenants. According to the latest SWOT analysis, a huge chunk of money is not being collected that would greatly impact the dollars gained in bed tax revenue. If your city did not have an ordinance in place at the time that HB 83 was passed, then they got free reign of your town. That's what's going on in Anna Marie, Longboat Key. It's not just us, it's all over the U.S. We're not unique to this problem. They're basically in and out, in and out, in and out. Right now, we're waiting for HB 307 one more time to go. Hopefully this week it may be passed again with the ability to do an ordinance. However, that ordinance only states that we can put an ordinance in for short-term parking, short-term noise, and possibly require them to identify themselves. If we can't find them, how are we going to make them identify themselves? It's not going to happen. Half of North Bay Shore from 141st to 1st Street East is all rentals. Every 3, 5, 7 days, there's new cars and new tags in those driveways. And that's just a portion of it. As it stands now, if this merges with SB 356, that's what we're going to be left with. We will not be able to regulate the duration or the frequency, but we can create an ordinance for noise and parking. Yay. I think we already have all those ordinances. So that doesn't throw me too much. Also, if we cannot locate them, how are we going to get them to register with us? Here's 3 solutions. First off, enforce our existing ordinances, 110176, 110201. Pass an ordinance to apply and enforce fines. I believe all of you guys have a copy of that ordinance, and I sent it to Tom last week. Get help identifying these properties and bring them into compliance with our existing codes. I can tell you that I have spent 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for the last 5 months on this. It is a very, very serious problem. We are losing our neighborhoods. They're turning into motels. I'm sorry, my phone's ringing. You guys have to forgive me. My husband's in the hospital, so I'm not really want to be here today.
Do you need to take that call?
I'll get it in a minute. What I'd like to do, if you guys don't mind, is I'd like for you to listen to Bill Priakos from TDC. Then I'd like for you to hear from Greg Mims from Indian Rocks. Then I'd like for you to hear from the condo people. So, Bill, would you give us your take on the SWOT analysis that we were talking about yesterday?
And Bill, if you hold on a second, Wayne, do you want me to do a 5-minute recess?
Why don't you take that phone
Yeah,
call?
why don't you, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. before, Bill, you get up, I was going to go ahead and have the city manager just go ahead and give a little background.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Commissioner Poe, after these couple of items, Mr. Mayor, we're going to ask that Commissioner Poe be excused so she can attend to family business. What's current is, what Elaine has been working on is this short-term rental. And Elaine, correct me if I'm wrong, but in R1 or R2 zoning, the short-term duration period is 3 months.
R1 is 6 months, R2 is 3 months.
There you go. Okay, so that's what you're dealing with. So this is a careful balance of a couple of things, and I don't know how dated that material is, but, you know, there's an argument on both sides, and I think Commissioner Poe would be the first one to agree with that, is there's a tourism aspect of this. How do we get our people down here and spend their money and go home? And then there's the, you know, I use Vince as an example. If Vince is an 85-year-old man and his neighbors are changing 9 times every month, that's not necessarily what we want either. And it does erode neighborhoods, but it promotes tourism. So there's a balance there. How do you handle this? Also, from an enforcement standpoint, and thank God for Elaine, you know, she does just as much work as anybody here at City Hall. You would have to put someone in a room in front of a computer 8 hours a day checking out these sites. Now, what I found, well, ironic's the wrong word, but amazing, is that we have 1,800 properties in Madeira Beach, a town of 4,200 people.
And
that are
3,950 residences.
right, doing this. So there's a problem. So we've got current legislation or current policy on the books that we're not enforcing, but the enforcement of it is somewhat, well, cumbersome. And I would say, I don't know, and Deputy Luckett's in the room, to hit them all would be damn near impossible, nearly impossible. So how do you go about changing this? Now, the one thing that I would like to, you know, throw out there right away is we've found that when we change things or when we implement things that people didn't know. I didn't know I was breaking the rule, and I wonder how many people out there just need an education on how to handle their property. And you look back a couple of years ago, these people were just trying to cover their nut on their properties, right? So I'm going to rent it out for, you know, if I can get $4,000 for my house for a week, hell, I'm going to rent it. But I didn't know that the city regulated that. And so there's some sort of educational component, and I spoke to Commissioner Poe about this on how we do that and how do we get the word out, because I can tell you there's a 75-year-old couple in every one of these condo associations that might be renting it out when they go up north and have no idea that they're breaking the rules. That's guaranteed. But there are certainly people out there that are aware of it. So all that considered, you got to balance all that out and how we're going to enforce it. And we would need some help. We would have to figure that out because everybody's got a full plate here at City Hall. So how we go about this from here on out, don't put something on the books that we can't enforce. And I think that's the first thing Commissioner Poe would say is, what's the point? You know, so we got to be able to work with whatever changes we make here. So.
Well, I'm to that point now, is if we do not get some help doing it, we'll never get it done. I can tell you, I do 12 hours a day, 7 days a week on this and everything else I'm working on. And I have been able to identify probably 500 out of the 1880. And that's primarily because, in case you guys don't know, these websites are pretty smart. They don't put the front of the house on it. Sometimes you have to find it by the clue of the gravel driveway or the 3-colored shutter on the side or a bird of paradise in the front yard. So it's not an easy job. There are services out there that do them and work on contingency basis. However, Shane and my thoughts are on that one is, why are we paying 40% to get this done for our city when the county walks away with 60%? Now, the only plus side with that is then we've got them into compliance. And then from then on, the money comes to where they're supposed to do.
That's a whole nother component of this, and Elaine may disagree with me, but there's a fight to be made there in regards to bed tax that, sure, we benefit from it, but certainly not directly. So who's fighting whose fight, basically? And I've said that to Elaine is the county's the one missing out on all these bed tax dollars. Sure, we get a grant here and there, and we benefit from it. But they should be leading the charge in regards to regulating this. And if they're not, or if they're not willing to, you know, hey, here's 50% funding for an office to handle this, or whatever the case may be, but they're not. And I don't know why why that is, but that's a huge part of this. So not only are they not paying their bed tax, they probably don't have a business tax license, they don't have any of those regulatory
Not
things
paying
that we
sales tax.
establish here. And so again, this is a very convoluted issue, and there's a lot of players and a lot of moving parts, and at the end of the day, we have to address it in a fashion that the city can actually do something about it. There's got to be some teeth involved if you want to do something, or if you want to throw up the white flag and say, hey, it is what it is. That's an option. I mean, I think Commissioner Poe would say the same thing, but then we would leave it alone, and we have to deal with the complaints and frankly change our ordinance, because right now we've got an
can't.
ordinance that, well, you're right,
Remember, we cannot touch that
we
ordinance.
can't, right. But right now, the statistic in the ordinance is, even on the short term of the short-term rental, is 3 months, and we're not enforcing that. And we're not enforcing it because it's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, Deputy Luckett's here in the room right now. We've tried. We've knocked on doors. These landlords train you. If I'm renting my house today for the weekend, he's now my nephew, and he's family, and all of a sudden it's no big deal. And that's going on. So there's a culture to this that is pretty severe. So
The other problem, we're running out of tenants because nobody wants to rent anymore for 6 months. They'll say, I'll do a 6 months rent lease, and then we'll see what happens in 6 months. Then at the time that lease comes up, they double the rent.
you mean landlords?
Yeah.
Yeah,
landlords.
We're running. I
running out
can
of 'em.
tell you that just based off of my own personal experiences. It's damn hard to find a place in town for a year. It really is difficult. So I think we've got some opposing viewpoints in the audience. I think, if anybody wants to come up and speak, but this is a very big issue. I think you'll be setting a trend, at least in our area, in regards to what you do if you do anything. But again, we really have to think this one through, because it's going to take resources to enforce it, and we're tapped at the minute, so we'll have to figure that out. And we can certainly figure it out based off of what you guys want to do.
We have to weigh the pros and cons. Do we want to continue to be a hotel motel in our residential areas? Or do we want to put the tourists back where they need to be, which would be in the places like Bill owns, the hotels and the motels, the cottages like Terry owns? I mean, it's been, quite frankly, after working on this as long as I have, it reminds me a lot of the chronic nuisance property ordinance. When I did 6 years of police reports for every street in our city, we have let this escalate to the point that it is basically out of control.
Well, and Elaine, you brought up the other issue. So one of the other commissioners had asked me, well, we've got a chronic nuisance ordinance, so why aren't we employing that in this regard? These are not spring breakers. These are mom and dad and 5 kids coming down for a weekend from Manitowoc, Wisconsin. They're not partying. They're not being loud. They're not doing anything other than renting it short term. So the nuisance ordinance really doesn't apply, because they're not making loud noises. They're any of those types of things. So it's completely, I guess they could be related if you do get a group of spring breakers, and we've had that. Dad calls up and says, yeah, I'm going to rent this house for a weekend, and then 19 kids from college show up, and they're doing what they do on spring break. So it's a balancing act. I don't envy you guys, because this is a very, very difficult decision when you consider the tourism aspect versus the enforcement and homebody type.
Please consider the residents.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of considerations here, not just the tourist dollar. It's a question of what are we going to turn into. If we're this bad right now, what are we going to be like next year? I uncovered 41 websites, and I didn't even touch rental agencies or real estate agents. I just did the big ones. The bad part about it is Airbnb. They're being banned from New York. Their New York attorneys are after them. They've offered to start paying bed tax if they'll let them come back in. Well, bed tax is only a portion of what we get. We're having rapes, we're having murders, we're having brothels, we're having all kinds of things popping up from these websites. For a while, they were trying to hide it. Last week, it came out on CNBC. I immediately went to my computer. In 29 seconds, I had 104,000 hits. 2 days later, I had 5 million. Needless to say, I didn't go through all of them. But, I mean, those are the things that this is actually spiraling out of control. This is what the Florida League of Cities is in Tallahassee fighting for. Governor Scott took the home rule power away from, we lost some of ours too, away from us when he passed 883. And right now, we're not going to get it back. But anyway, that's enough of that. You guys know how I'm like a bulldog, so I can only tell you that
Elaine,
much.
maybe, first of all, Deputy Lucky, you can sit down, man. You're making me nervous. You can grab a chair if you want.
They're not going to shoot.
Secondly, maybe before, and this may spur some conversation from the people that want to speak, you know, Tom and his firm represent a whole host of different cities. Or do you have any of your cities that are addressing this issue, or do they kind of just cater to it, or what's happening in other locations?
This issue came up a number of years ago in Tarpon Springs, where in fact an entire neighborhood of smaller homes was being used for this type of activity, and they basically decided that they were going to begin to enforce, and they were bringing landlords to the code enforcement board, and they were citing them for code violations, and they did it consistently until they basically convinced these 8 or 10 or 12 German families that owned these residences that they were no longer going to do this in that small neighborhood. And so Tarpon Springs did do it. We're not really having the same issues come up in any of the other communities that I'm aware of.
Well, I've talked to some of the other communities, and there are problems out there. The biggest thing I hear is, we don't have you in our community. If we had you in our community, we'd know how many we have. Matter of fact, I sent Bill Clearwater, so he'd have an idea of how many's going on in Clearwater.
So, Elaine, is it safe to say, Commissioner Poe, is it safe to say that the end game for you is to just enforce what we've got?
Absolutely, and to write an ordinance, which I think everybody has a copy of it from Brevard County. Unless you have money involved in it, nobody pays any attention. This one is basically $500 a day for breaking the rules. I mean, I don't know what to say, guys. When I started this, I had no concept that it was as huge as it is, or if it's as worldwide as it is.
Elaine, can you go back to that ordinance? So the ordinance provides for a fine?
Yes.
Is that what all that is?
That's all it is.
Okay,
That's
so-
all we can do.
So if hotel owner Lister rents his house for 3 weeks, we would take him either to the magistrate or in front of the code enforcement guy or whatever, and if found guilty or however we'd go about that, he would get a lien put on his property for $500, or?
It wouldn't be a lien. We would apply it to the ad valorem tax, just like we do in the chronic nuisance
Okay,
property.
so he gets a $500 stipend, if you will, on his
Per
tax
day
bill?
that he's renting.
Per day.
Illegally.
All right.
It doesn't matter that he's paying the bed tax on it. The whole point of the thing is, it's not legal in Madeira Beach.
Yeah, you know, if this is where we end up, you know, I can see how we can get there. I firmly believe that, I don't want to give you a percentage, but I would bet there's a lot to do with just the lack of education. You know,
Well, you would think that, but however, I know for a fact that Gwen has sent out numerous letters.
Yep.
And I can go by, and there's new cars there every 3, 5, 7 days.
Yeah, I think
So
we're gonna.
they've been educated, they're
Sure.
not listening.
Sure, I think, you know, we're gonna have our everyday infractors, but, you know, I'm thinking of a couple of agencies in town, you know, there's TRS, there's all of those that, they're aware of it, they're probably very cognizant of it, and they comply with
They
the
do.
rule. I think it's your individual here and there, you know, I own a piece of property, I live up in New Hampshire, and I've got it on, you know, that whatever website that you showed me the other day. But I think, you know, if we, instead of a ticket, you know, if we sent, you know, and we can do this, you know, send out a mailer to every property owner in town saying, just so you're aware, boom, here's the regulation, and now we're going to enforce it. I think that would do away with at least some of it. And then if we can eliminate that workload, or, you know, let's say we eliminate 1/3 of it, that's 1/3 less than we have to enforce, and then, you know, I can kind of come down on code compliance and the community police and deputy and Gwen and say, hey, you know, we're just going to do the best we can and enforce what we've got, if at the end of the day that's the way you guys want to.
But that's basically what we're doing now, the best we can.
Right, without that educational component, and I think we really got to, you know, we'd have to spend some money on doing that and some resources on finding all the property owners, but I think that needs to happen, and I see Wayne's in the audience, and I'm sure we'll get some sort of press out of this. But that doesn't reach the absentee landowner.
That's the other thing I wanted to bring up too. With all the research that I've done, and I have gone through every condo on this entire beach and looked at how many were owned by residents here, and I can tell you that between the houses that are being rented out that we found and the condos, probably 93% do not live anywhere near Madeira Beach.
Right, that I easily believe.
So therefore, this does not affect them. They're not here. I don't know who, if you read all the guidelines, or if you're going to run a vacation rental, Those houses are supposed to be sanitized after every person moves out. I've seen people load in a car while somebody else pulls in and unloads it. So there are a lot of guidelines that should be followed.
Yeah, I think that this,
Can't we send a certified letter to, you know, the names of these 1,800 people?
Are you kidding?
No, I'm asking a question. Because you're so thorough, I don't know if you did or not.
I have about 500 here, if you'd like for me to read them off to you.
please don't,
But-
please don't.
But no, I don't know them all. They're too hard to find, and it's too time-consuming.
Well, but we have the resources to do that. So we could figure something out and at least get the ball rolling. I don't, Elaine, I think is the one that brought it up. I think this is just one more thing that we're learning that we probably were just a little laxed in the past. But there is this tourism aspect to it, and if you're absolutely, hey, tourists come on down, spend your money and go home, you don't look at this as a major issue, but if you're living next door to it, I bet you it's a major issue, so.
Well, the other thing you got to think about, too, these people come in overnight. They come in for 2 days or 3 days for a long weekend. They rent the houses because, first, they have more room. Second, they have a kitchen. So they spend more money at the grocery store, and then they come home and cook because they're only here for 3 days. So apply that to 10 or 20 people that are coming in and out to a full-time tenant who stays here for a year, shops at our grocery stores, goes to our bank, uses all of our services on a full-time basis. So I think one hand would wash the other one on that one. I don't think we get that much from these 3-day people.
Is it usually in the R1 and the R2 areas?
Well, actually, since condos are still zoned R3, they're, matter of fact, 2 of them are here from Madeira Towers. They'll give you a really firsthand example of what's going on in their condos. But we do have a lot in R1 and R2.
Have we ever pushed that 3 months or 6 months?
No.
Has anybody ever been cited for that?
I don't know if anybody's been recently cited, but, you know, it all comes down, we've tried to address the issue, and since, I'm sorry, Deputy Luckett took over for Sean Hefner, and maybe it was even Hef, the case in point where all of a sudden the tenant is somebody's nephew was what we got at the door, and so it's the burden of proof is difficult, you know, and the ability to find them unless you've got Elaine in a room running a page of, hey, here's where to go today because somebody's renting this short term. It's pretty complicated. Now, we've been getting great intel from Commissioner Poe. Gwen issues letters. I know Deputy Luckett's knocked on some doors, but when you're talking about 1,800 of them, we're not even making a dent.
No, we're not. And they're coming in faster than we can count them. So,
Well, and
we
with
just escalate. I mean, we go up from, think about it, February, we had 1,000. This is only April, and we're almost at 2,000.
and I don't know, what's the current penalty?
We don't have a penalty.
Well, so then why the hell not do
That's
it?
why we need at least something to bring them into compliance.
Right.
We
So,
can't change our ordinance. Everybody must understand that. We cannot change it. We can't touch it.
You're
Until,
talking about ordinance 1138?
no, I'm talking about
yeah.
110, 176, and 201. We can't change them. If we do, we open ourselves up to becoming whatever anybody wants to rent can rent. So we don't want to do that. It's bad enough now that we do have some
No,
rules.
we're not enforcing it either.
No, we're not.
Okay.
But anyway, if you want to open it up, that's great with me.
I'm Bill Priakis, I'm the officer on site at Beaufort Beach Resort up at Indian Shores, and we represent about 91 of the 160 condos there, and all of ours are fully in compliance because we have our condo docs that authorize short-term rentals, and of course, as a member of the community, we pay bed tax automatically through our software, which each guest comes in, and it just happens automatically. So Diane and Nelson and I are good friends. In fact, Diane and her entire staff came to our condo association alliance meeting last week, and we discussed how we could help all of her staff keep condos in compliance, because a lot are not in an alliance such as ours. They're independent. And this is apart from what you're trying to do, totally. So, and in all candor, I don't think is nearly as big a problem as what you have here in Madeira Beach and what we have all up and down the island and in this business. Ours is minor in comparison to that. And I admire what you're doing, Commissioner Poe, and making your effort, and having your commission aware of what the problem is. You've really got a problem here. And Mr. Crawford, I'll take your challenge. That's why I'm here. I volunteered with the TDC to come out and do research to see how we can involve ourselves and our council in trying to solve this problem and to assist communities such as yours to do something about this. It's myriad. I mean, there's all sorts of moving parts to this, and a lot of things, a lot of factors involved. So you have my commitment to work on it, and in fact, I guess I'm the de facto condo representative on the TDC. There's like your mayor here, we have Mayor Kreisman and our mayor from Clearwater, and then most of the others are hoteliers, but I'm the only one who represents condos. So that's where we are. So, yes.
TDC, Tourist Development Council, right? That's what it stands for, the acronym?
Yes.
Has that board taken a formal position on the issue or not?
No, they've not. At this last meeting, I brought to their attention the information that Elaine had sent me, and I think most of us were just totally unaware. I mean, we were just very aggressive in going out to collect the bed tax.
Sure.
But the implications of the situation you have here of R2 and R1 violations being made by, primarily I think it's homeowners and individual residences, as I see it, not so much condos.
Okay, because I think...
So that's what we intend to do. I mean, I intend to take it back to see if I can't get some sort of formal position.
Right, I think the position where I was trying to get with that is if a county-sponsored or however that TDC is put together, Tourism Development Council says, wait a minute, we view this as an issue, then the tourism argument, I think, is diminished a little bit. If they're saying, wait, this is an issue that we don't exactly approve of in our communities, then I'd start wavering the other way in regards to the argument. Take the tourism part out of it, and then I think the idea that Elaine had about, you know, defending our people, the homeowners in town, becomes a little bit more of a jagged argument if the TDC and those types of groups are saying, well, this is an issue.
Well,
Florida League of City is doing the same thing.
Well, I would say, and I noticed your statements about bringing the tourism here and not deflecting that in any way, but the point is, that's why we have hotels, and that's why we have condos in groups like ours up at Indian Shores. We should get them back to that situation rather than in residential areas in houses and condos that are not authorized to do so. I think that's the big point. Is that not what we're doing here? So I see your point, and I'm trying to gain research and take it back, so perhaps we can take a position. The TDC is elected by the Board of Commissioners of Pinellas County, so we do have a responsibility to them.
Yeah, I think a position from that agency would really carry a lot of weight, especially with smaller communities such as ours that's trying to battle this, because regardless of what side you sit on, there's two arguments to be made. But when you're thinking of who should take priority, it's your homeowners. That's why we're here. That's what we're here to do. So
remember, they're the ones that voted us in.
Right.
They're our first priority as far as I'm concerned.
Can I answer any other questions by anybody?
Actually, Bill, the condo association, if I listen to somebody in the condo wants us to cover this, isn't it covered by the bylaws of the condo association, what they can do in there as far as people coming in or units being rented out?
Yes.
So it wouldn't actually, us chasing the condo end of it wouldn't really be.
The issue, though, Mayor, and I think we found it with Commissioner Poe's research, some condo associations are minimizing or making up their own set of rules, which is not compliant
with Madeira Beach,
with our ordinance. So they're saying, well, you can only rent your condo for 3 weeks at a time. No, you can't. And so that's the issue. So that their bylaws, what they should say is need to be compliant with city code. That would be the easiest way to do it, but there's one I know particularly that doesn't necessarily jive with that, and so that's the issue. So we'd have to have all condo associations come into compliance with city code if that's the route that you want to roll.
If I could just jump in, the code provisions you got are for R1 and R2. You don't have a prohibition for short-term rentals in R3. So most of these condominiums are not covered by the city code. So there is no 3-month or 6-month provision for condominiums. So you can enforce it in R1 and R2, but all these people that are complaining about it all going on in their condominiums, you can't do anything about that right now because you can no longer create an ordinance because of this state statute that, that preempts you. So you don't want to change it in R1 and R2 because you'll lose that for good. You can't add it for R3 because it's not enforceable because you're preempted.
Some of the states that I've been talking to, what they're doing to get around this, to give a better handle to it for the condos, is the zoning for condos came about a long time ago when they were more of a novelty and more of a summer place than they were for full-time residents. So they were grouped in with resorts and motels and hotels. Most of the places that are having major problems are rezoning for that, getting them out of the resort R3. I don't know if that's anything our city would want to think about, or even the condos, but I know Beverly and, thank you, Beverly and Barbara, they have a take on this also, being condo presidents.
Elaine, do you know the numbers involved if you took the condos out of it that the city attorney is saying we can't really enforce? What is the remainder of those astronomical numbers that you were saying? I mean, is it 75% in the condos?
No, it's not 75% in the condos.
Is it half?
If I had to guess, I'd say it would be half, but it's not. There's just too many personal properties around.
So, Tom, is the solution what Commissioner Poe said? Let's just say that we wanted to enforce this as deeply as possible. Would that require rezoning on the condos in Madera Beach?
The only way that you could currently get them in is to put them in R1 or R2, but you don't want to be doing that because that will frankly then allow you in your current R1 that would allow greater density. You'd have someone take down a house and they put up a triplex, and you don't necessarily want that. So I think that where Commissioner Poe is going is that get them out of R1 and get them out of R2, enforce your current code, and then to regulate those that are in R3 or the condo associations is to keep track of them by basically placing another fee on top of them by a BTR or I'm curious about this tax issue because, municipalities can't pass a tax. And so I'm curious about this. Brevard County. Counties can, cities can't. So we'd have to figure out some other way of doing it, but adding an additional fee for the purposes of regulation to determine what they're doing it, when they're doing it, how they're doing it, and maybe address, it that particular way, just some type of regulation. But according to the state statute, we're not able to do a lot of the things that we want to do in regulating the condos other than collecting a fee. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. Barb, you and Beverly want to say something?
Well, I don't understand. Can you explain to me what R1, R2, and R3 is?
Yeah, there are different zoning districts. They set forth, and I don't have the code in front of me, but each one of those is a particular zoning district that would allow a particular type of property ownership, such as single-family homes. Usually R1 and R2, it's single-family homes, and it increases the lot size. But when you go into R3, it's like multifamily condominiums, that type of zoning district. And I'd be happy to, we can get the code and give you the exact specifics, but it's 1 and 2 are basically single-family home zoning districts. R3 is multifamily home. Duplexes, triplexes, condominiums, but it's also residential.
C district, it's just a commercial district.
Right. Yeah, C1, C2, light industrial, any of those different types. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about just single-family residences, basically.
Well, I guess what we're really concerned about, when we bought our condos, it was residential.
Right.
And all of a sudden, people are buying in there, and they use it occasionally, but most of the time, the units are being rented. So that has taken us from a residential building to really, half of it's commercial because people are making money on those units.
And they're doing it online, many of them, by themselves, rather than going through a, company. And we are a 30-day rental according to our docs, but they are abusing it. You see them coming and going, and it's happening more and more often. So it's really a problem. It's a problem for the residents that live there. I mean, it's just getting out of hand.
And we have friends up and down the beach. I mean, it isn't
Yeah.
happening only in Madeira Beach. It's happening up and down the.
But
the
I
whole-
don't think as much in Reddington as it is here.
Well, not Reddington. I think Reddington
address
has something in that says no one can rent in Reddington Beach for less than 90 days. 3 months, yeah.
We have that provision here in the it's either R1 or R2. But to answer your question about the control of your own condominium, you have a condominium association. You have a board more than likely. They are the ones that need to get active. They are the ones that need to control that. This city commission can't be doing that for you. You need to put the pressure on your board to do what they're elected to do, and that is just to enforce the condo docs that you've all bought into. And that could solve some of that problem for you. But we don't currently have a provision in our code that would address it. And based upon this new law that went into place, we're prohibited from adopting another law for R3 zoning. Until that law goes away, which I don't foresee that happening, we can't help you in that regard. The only thing that we could do, or this commission could do, would be to pass some type of regulation that would require an additional fee. And frankly, I don't see that solving your problem, because what's going to happen is those renters or those landlords are just going to charge more to collect that fee. And that won't really help your situation. But your control is by your board, your condo board.
Well, we're trying. We're trying very hard.
Greg, do you have anything to say? Greg and I were Tallahassee partners for 307.
Thank you. I'm Greg Mims. I'm the city manager up in Indian Rocks Beach. Hey, Shane. I'll just kind of share the pain with you. We had the same issue in Indian Rocks Beach, and we've not done the research that Commissioner Poe has done. In fact, on the long van ride back from Tallahassee, I said I may hire you to work for me part-time to do our own research. But
So bye, guys.
I think, unfortunately, I think here's the summary of where we are, the way I see it, and I agree with, particularly with a couple of things that Shane said earlier. It's going to be up to each city to enforce. If you're fortunate enough to have an ordinance, and we have one, to enforce the ordinance. I can tell you I've only been with Indian Rocks Beach for a number of months, and unfortunately, along the lines of what y'all have already talked about, we've not done a very good job of enforcing the ordinance that we have. So that's the discussion our commission is having. But it's really going to be up to each individual city to take action to enforce what you have. And it's going to take the will of the commission to back the staff up to do that, because as Shane's alluded to, there's a component of this about tourism, and there's some sensitivities to how you do it. But you just have to get in there and do the research, and hopefully if you choose to go this route to enforce what you have, to back your staff up to do it, because it's not a real popular thing when you try to enforce it. I would also emphasize what we run into all the time is that these folks are very well trained. We have a part-time code enforcement officer that goes and knocks on a door, and he starts making inquiries about who's in the home. They usually are pretty quick to tell you that I'm so-and-so's cousin, nephew, and that's just kind of an internet thing. But finish up, because I know y'all talked about this for a long time. I think what we're going to do is along the lines of what Shane has talked about, is that I think there's an educational component to this, where you actually send a letter, on the front end, a polite letter to the people that are in the R1 and R2 districts. That's the same rule that we have in Indian Rocks Beach. Number one, to give them a heads up about what the rules are, because I do think there's some people, a certain percentage that don't know that. There's some that do it blatantly. And then since I've been in this for 28-plus years, I'd say the second part of it is, after you do that, you have to cite somebody and make an example out of a few folks to get that turned around, because the word, particularly in the small cities that your city and our small city, if you'll take a few people through your court process, whatever process you use here, it doesn't take long for the word to circulate around about the city's serious about that, and I think you'll begin to make some headway. But it's a real difficult thing, and unfortunately the legislature, in its wisdom or lack of wisdom, whichever side you're on this, has just really tied cities and counties' hands on dealing with the issue locally. If they would have left it in the terms of home rule, then each city could make its own determination about how they want to handle this. Unfortunately, with the law that's passed, and I think it was 2011, it's really made this whole thing messy, and particularly legally messy. We had a case that we had to tread lightly on because of the legislature and traveling to Tallahassee with Commissioner Poe. I'm not real convinced that we're going to be any better off when whatever bill passes in Tallahassee. In fact, we may be in a worse situation. But that's all I really have to share. But I emphasize, I do think each city is just going to have to bite the bullet and enforce what you have, because there's really not any way to change what you have currently. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate you coming down from up north, and that was a discussion between Mayor Johnson, myself, and Mayor Queen this morning on, are we going to be better off if that passes?
It really won't affect us in the way that it affects the ones that did not have an ordinance at the time that was passed. We have our ordinance. The thing it affects us with is we cannot change our ordinance.
No, you have to have it for the TV viewing.
Guy Critelli, 13025 Pelican Lane. I have one for you, really good one. I have a neighbor that rents the unit every week, and plus, he's got homestead.
I know.
So, and I know two of them, two people, two homeowners. They have a homestead on Madeira Beach, but they rent a house in the condo, in the unit. That's all I have to say.
That's the other aspect of this. There are a ton of them out there doing this with homestead on them. And when you start doing the research, when you find them, when you find the property, you'll also find out whether or not they have a legal homestead. I have very good contacts at the county with every department.
Any other input from the audience? Folks, I think we need to do a little more homework on this. I'd like to hear a little bit from the city attorney. I'd like to see what the effects would be on forest tourism, on mom and pop, actually little places, not just on homes. I got it on houses.
But it doesn't affect the little places.
Okay, so it
like
doesn't
Terry.
affect them at
No,
all.
doesn't affect them at all. Doesn't affect Madeira Bay.
cottages at all, I pay my taxes.
Madeira Bay
The
Resort
R1
is
and R2
actually.
is where we can
Okay,
fight.
Commissioner.
We
Yeah.
can fight R1 and R2.
Right.
We just need to educate people, and I like that part of it. We need people like Guy Gatelli to call and say, this guy's renting next door. If we educate the owners, that's great. But if you educate that guy next door and say, I got a rental next door to me, and I told Dave, 180 days is all you can do, and he knows that. And when he bought that house, I made sure he knew that. So if you have a neighbor that's concerned, then you can stop short-term rentals in your neighborhood. I guarantee you can. I got a house across the street that stayed that vacant for 2 years because people can't afford to buy it because they can't rent it. And I told them, you're not gonna be able to rent that property. Not for a short period of time. So it's educating the public, the next door neighbor, not just that person, that homeowner.
Right.
But it's also enforcing that 60 days and 90 days thing, and 180 days. We need to start enforcing that, and if somebody like Guy calls it in, Deputy Luckett can go knock on that door and says, I know better. I've got collaboration. I know that you can't be doing it.
That's key, I think, and if you look at the workload in its totality, if we can eliminate a third of it by education, and then all of a sudden Amy's going to call if I rent my house for a week, now it's not me just breaking the rules. I've got eyes on me from all over in my neighborhood. I think, you know, a mass mailing to the landowners, property owners in Madeira Beach, like I said, the rental agencies and, you know, the TRSs of the world, they're complying. They're doing it. It's the single home guy, you know, that, you know, from New Hampshire that never comes down here that's renting it on some website. So if you want, and Commissioner Poe and the Board of Commissioners, if this meets your fancy, what we could do is put together a mailer. And include the, you know, do you know you are required to pay bed tax? Do you know you're required to take out a business tax license, so on and so forth?
Why don't we just have Wayne put it in the paper?
We could do that, but that doesn't reach the absentee landowner. And
No,
so
this is true.
that's the concern, and I'm sure, and Wayne, I'll be happy to talk to you and Commissioner Poe after the meeting or when Commissioner Poe has time, but A, to get it out that we're going to address it, but B, let's put some resources together and get this out to the property owners and start there. Then they, you know, that's a fair and equitable way to do this, and then we can start enforcing. And I think, you know, whoever in the audience suggested it, you bust a couple of people, and we know how the Coconut Telegraph works in Madeira Beach. It'll be around real quick. So, but I think the educational component first, before you start writing tickets and busting doors down, is probably the right way to go. I don't know what that would mean in terms of an expense, but it's something that we'll certainly find for you guys and get done, and I think we should do that now. And then let's revisit this in 6 months, see what kind of effect that is, and then have, you know, Elaine, maybe we can have a little educational seminar again. You know, it's probably time to do that in regards to the chronic nuisance ordinance anyway. Could add this to if you're going to own property in Madeira Beach, these are the regulations that we ask you to comply with.
So I'm sorry, Pat, let me ask Tom this real quick, or I'll lose my thought. Tom, how come we cannot send letters to HomeAway.com, Airbnb, VRBO? Why can we not educate them? They're supposed to, according to them, they tell all their clients to make sure you know what the codes are before you put your ad in. Why can we not start sending letters to these websites letting them know that they're in violation of our codes?
If we have specific information that they are violating the code, I think it would be a good idea to actually send it to them as well.
Okay.
Because we would do that to any violator, whether they're a property owner or whether they're a tenant or a rental agent or whatever. We want to let them all know that they're in violation of that particular code.
Okay, how much information do you want?
Well, I think the starting point would be if we do it like the state statute requires, is that we would send it to the violator at the address listed by the property appraiser or tax collector as a basis. In addition to that, we would send it to any other person that we know is involved.
Okay.
The rental agent, you know, any other person that says that they have the right to rent. But if we have a specific address, we'd send it by certified mail, and we'd send it by regular mail, so that we'd know that if the regular mail doesn't come back, that they've got it, even though they haven't signed for the certified mail.
And I think we should start by prioritizing the homestead, because those people that are gonna get hit with that $25,000 or $50,000 extra tax bill are gonna take notice. They can't rent this property.
We are, trust me, that's one of the things on the agenda to do also.
Leave the condos out on the R3 thing. The R3 thing, your boards can take care of that. This man right here has already got it under control, so you guys need to get together and talk about how to keep that under control with your board. Absolutely.
No.
We have no control. We can't control R3 whatsoever. Your board. Yes, ma'am.
But our regulatory authority has no jurisdiction over what you guys do. So right now, they're not breaking the rules unless they're breaking your own condo association rules. Then they're breaking the rule. So.
And I know several condominium complexes that maintain parking regulations. You can't park unless you have a resident sticker. Period. So they're walking in there if they're coming in.
See, I think there's a disconnect. I don't think you're following us. So if you got it. Mm-hmm.
We can't regulate.
We can't regulate.
The tourist development tax collector can.
Right.
And they in turn will turn it over to Diane Nelson. If there's anyone with a legal homestead, they will also turn it over to the Pinellas County property appraiser. So you do have a way to get it turned over.
It's a little elementary, but it's almost like narc on your neighbor type process, but that's the only way that you're going to be able to get it back under control, or at least get it within the confines of what your condo docs state. Yeah, no problem. No problem. So, Madam Poe, maybe, oh, I'm sorry,
What-
Commissioner. Anyway, if, maybe once your family situation, we get you in next week, we'll put together a document that you can maybe assist us with, and then we'll
Okay.
run it through legal to make sure it's all right, and then we'll figure out what that expense is gonna be and get that out, if that be the will of the commission. I know Commissioner Shantz has a comment.
Well, I was thinking, probably ought to have the ordinance in place. But, so write that in a letter.
Right.
This
Oh,
is the
yeah.
fine
Yeah.
that's gonna come across the table.
We'll probably include the ordinance in some fashion. If, I agree with Tom, at first I thought, well, let's just send out a little, like a junk mail mailer, but that won't do the trick, I think. I think if we're gonna do this, it should be a certified letter to the property owners involved, and do it the right way, so we actually get some sort of effect or response.
Deputy Luckett, is that working? All the letters that are being sent out to these property owners, is it working? Have they been educated? But has it worked? I mean, are they still educated, or have they been dumbed down again? Okay.
I mean, we're gonna have our chronic offenders though, too.
Oh,
I mean, we're
absolutely.
gonna, they're just gonna do whatever they want. If they, they're behind on their mortgage or whatever, they're gonna do whatever they can to rent that place. But I think this is a good first step, and then when first step makes an effect, we'll measure that effect and then move on to step two. If that's comfortable with the commission, and hopefully that
I'm
Commissioner
fine
Poe,
with-
that
Hey,
that
I
takes
just-
the workload off you a
I
little
just
bit.
want to get the workload off.
Yep. Let's do that maybe sometime next week. Come on in, and we'll, Amy and Cheryl and a couple others, maybe we can figure out how we'd get all those addresses. There's gotta be a way to do that.
Again. Sorry, guys. This is my day. The only reason I'm here is because I've been working on this for so long. I had to get it out of the way, but I need to get back to the hospital. We have a problem with sober houses. We do not have a problem in Madeira Beach as of this time, but there are problems. They are being, I'll read you the problems. It'll be easier than me trying to explain it. There is currently no regulation on these homes. Many of the individuals are court-ordered to be in one of these homes. They're set up in residential neighborhoods. Most are unsupervised, as many as 10 people living in one house. The limit is 6, by the way, 4 related, 2 unrelated, but there's a ton more than that. Kitchens are removed to make additional room for bunk beds, usually 2 bunk beds to a room. So they usually charge anywhere from $180 a week to $200 a week. So it's quite a profit maker there. We have a large group in Florida who rent property in residential neighborhoods and sets these houses up. I won't give you their name. Some are within blocks of elementary, middle, and high schools. There have been rapes, murders, drugs in Largo, Tampa, St. Pete, and Seminole. Deputy Luckett has some specs for you, too. We will bring, if we do not come up with a way to make sure that we as a city can regulate these or determine where they can be, we will bring right back to the community what we fought so hard the last 3 years to get rid of. Right now we have House Bill 479, which is passed. It only requires a voluntary certification. They don't have to do it. SB 582 is on the floor hopefully this week. It would require a valid certification of registration. We need an ordinance somehow to designate where these houses can be in our community and guidelines to go by. We had one, just for your record, we had one on 145th when I first started doing this in 2011. I was going to bring just for that piece of property, the reports are like this. It actually said on it, on the property appraiser's office, rehabilitation. They were bringing them in, non-stop arrest from this place. Right before we passed the abatement of drugs, you remember that one, it was my first one, I met with the property owner and I met with their attorney. And they said, what is this going to do to us? And I said, hopefully it's going to get you to clean up your act, or we're going to come after you as a city. 1 month before this ordinance went into place, they cleaned out that property. I don't think we've had an arrest there since. So that worked. I don't know how we can do this because of the Fair Housing Act. I don't know if we don't get 582 passed so that we can actually say, I'm sorry, if you're going to be here, you're going to have to be registered, you're going to have supervisors on staff, you're going to have people to work there. But do we really want 6 to 8 drunks or druggies in our residential neighborhoods around our children? So you guys, I can only tell you this has consumed a lot of time also. My folder for this one is just as big if you want me to drag it out.
Commissioner Poe, real quick, on a lot of this for the requirements, it cannot be so many feet away from a public park, from a school, from a meeting area outside. There was certain criteria that they, okay.
There's nothing.
Since they do pay some type of monetary, $200 a week money, aren't they considered renters? So how can they get in an R1 or an R2 for less than 90 days or 180 days?
Because someone is coming in, a very large group is coming in, I'll be glad to share it with you off camera, is coming in and they're renting the houses.
They're renting the houses.
They're renting the houses. Most of the properties that I have found, the owners do not live in the city where the houses are.
I understand, but there's no paperwork between that sober person or that person that's in that house. and
None,
the owner.
none.
None
It's only
whatsoever.
between the corporation. That's the problem. It's like a lot of other things, it's hidden in the background. Debbie Luckett, talk. Speak.
I've just got maybe 35 minutes worth of, no, not going to do that to you. Very briefly, and I'm certainly not here to advise you one way or the other, but what I do want to tell you is from a law enforcement view, you are going to seriously task the law enforcement that you currently have and far exceed if you have individuals in here that are unregulated. And to give you some examples, and the community I mainly grabbed from, very recent in Seminole, they had a halfway house there. And just in a 4-year period from 2008 to 2012, they had, and I'll give you the specific number so I don't misquote, we had responding a little over 900 calls for service involving those individuals at that property. 900 calls. That means, doesn't necessarily mean at the property, it could be around it, but they lived there, their address was there, they were leaving from there. That's a lot. Specific to the property, a little over 480 reports of offenses generated from that property. That's a lot. That's a little over 3 calls for service a week at that property. I think one of the things to consider, and especially if it's not regulated, it's not that you don't like people recovering. You don't like people trying to get help that want it. Commissioner Poe said something very key, court-ordered. When these individuals are court-ordered, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've made that leap to say, I want help. They're just ordered to go through this program, to do this, get out, and move on with their lives. That's why we have such a problem with crime. You might have seen in the paper last year, Sheriff Galtieri had an issue with, it was more of a work release situation in Largo, but that property alone, the individuals were ordered to be there, so they took their business outside the house. They would drop narcotics in bushes or contraband in bushes around, for blocks around that property. I don't think we want that as a community where you've got an area that's cleaned up residential and these folks are looking for hiding places for narcotics or weapons where kids could find it. I think it's a huge concern. I think that, I don't know what your answer is within creating regulations to run through some of the crimes on the Seminole property in those 4 years. Missing runaways. That's not an 8-year-old missing runaway. That's a court-ordered person that left the program. Your law enforcement in Madeira now have to do the follow-up to try to find that person. Investigate where they are. Look for them. It's very time-consuming, what I'm saying to you, too. From as a community standpoint, you're going to have to look at, is the current staffing level you have for your law enforcement enough to handle the problem, if that were to happen. Burglaries, child abuse, armed robberies, batteries, aggravated assaults, controlled substances, disorderly conducts. Those are just some of the crimes related to that one property that we're talking about. Seminole closed it up. As a commission there, as law enforcement, they bound together. They said enough is enough and got rid of it. So I would say there is a very true, real problem that you're going to have to deal with if you have court-ordered, if you have sober houses, as Commissioner Poe's talking about, in the communities, in neighborhoods. There are no regulations. There's nothing that says it can't be right next to a church. So those are some issues you really have to deal with. From a law enforcement aspect, we'll do whatever you need us to do. We'll make arrests. We'll be out there on the street. I don't know if that's what you want for tourism and for the community feel that you've really done a great job of setting up. You've got the sheriff's office in here. You all know it's a huge difference from what was happening 4 years ago. So for what it's worth, if you have any questions, throw them at me. But I do think from a law enforcement standpoint, it's going to be potentially ridiculous what's going to come in around those properties, especially court-ordered.
So
You
that's
guys
obviously
probably
wouldn't be covered under the nuisance.
No.
You know, that's a very good point. Even if it's covered under the nuisance, one, the court order would take away that would be a problem. Two, a lot of the fixes is you get rid of the tenant that's the problem. Well, if it's a court-ordered house where they're having that, the next tenant comes in could be just as bad or worse than the person that's just been booted out of the program.
They obviously don't make them wear any type of leg brace.
Not in a sober house or halfway house, no.
How do you have any idea how Seminole closed that loophole?
That was actually, they just worked, and I wouldn't want to speak for the city. I know that it was a great deal of effort for over a year. I think it had something to do with renewing license and just convincing the person that it wasn't going to be worth the headache anymore. But that was 2 years ago. But I can also let you talk to the deputies that specifically assisted with that. But it was 4 years to do it. Let's put it that way. It took 4 years of crimes occurring in that area and around that area. And that doesn't necessarily track everything that happened.
Right.
And what I mean by that is if we had a burglary 2 blocks over, if we don't catch that person, we may never realize that that person was tied to this property. So it's hard to say how much crime was related that wasn't reported.
Was that our closest sober house in Seminole?
It's no longer there, but that would be the closest one. There's one in St. Pete right now. There's some very similar statistics.
There's 27 in St. Pete.
Yeah.
Tell me this, are they required to be identified in some way as to
No.
I don't know of any regulations. I'm not.
They're not required for anything. Somebody rents the house. The first clue you're going to have is somebody just rents a house across from you, and all you see going in are bunk beds.
Yeah, keep in mind, I'm not here to tell you that here's what they look like, here's what they are. There's a lot of different looks. I'm just trying to give you some input on law enforcement services, the intensiveness of what some of these might bring in, and the concerns that obviously we would have to handle the increased call volumes.
Tell them what our deputies said.
Which ones?
All of them.
I don't know of a single law enforcement officer, and Sheriff Galtieri certainly has had to deal with some situations in Largo recently on the work release that wants a community have higher crime. You know, that might be, we all love chasing the bad guy, catching the bad guy, but we don't necessarily want higher crime to have to do that. So no, I don't know of anybody that was supporting unregulated or
Most of our
increased
deputies have
crimes.
said, no, we don't need them. We've had them. We don't.
Oh,
need
certainly
them.
we don't need them.
No.
But I don't know that, anybody can say we're not going to have them. But just from a law enforcement, hey, we've got enough to go do right now. I don't need the extra, the deputies don't need the extra 20 calls a month.
I don't understand how they can justify, and I know this probably sounds kind of quirky, but, you have a sex offender, and they have to be identified. I am a sex offender, and it's posted on the front door or something. How can they justify the fact of putting a house in the middle of a neighborhood with maybe people who are sex offenders or drug addicts or whatever? How can they justify that?
See, the difference is sexual predators are regulated, monitored, and controlled by a government entity. FDLE tracks sex offenders. They have to report. They have to update their addresses. If they move without reporting that address, they can actually get arrested. So it's a little more control over that. Are there places for court-ordered halfway houses and sober houses? Absolutely. They're critical as a society. We have to give people a chance, without a doubt. I just don't know that residential areas are for that. We have a huge, you've got Safe Harbor by the jail that houses homeless and transients and people that are down on their luck. That's an ideal location for it. they're in a more industrial area, they're near the jail where there's law enforcement presence already. So I'm not saying there's not places for it, I just don't know that residences are the place that you want this. A tourist area are the place you want this. What's that?
I said, I know, and we don't want that.
Yeah, I'm sure. And again, you know, if it's what happens, if it's unregulated, hey, I promise you, your law enforcement, the sheriff's office, we will be there 100%. We will do everything we can to control it, but it will be controlling, not stopping, because of the turnover.
And I'll ask Mr. City Attorney, what is there something that we can do to put something in place to stop this? Is there anything, or is it something to where if it comes up, or if somebody comes in here wanting to do a business tax license or a business license?
Well, let me
make it
tell you,
tough on 'em?
I'm very concerned about this, and I don't mean so much as that it's not a problem. You don't have one of these in the city of Madeira Beach, but I can tell you that the town just north of here, north or south, I can't remember, just paid over $1 million fighting a case like this and lost.
Yeah. Once they're in, you can't get them out.
Yeah, and so it's not a matter of keeping them out of your city, it's a matter of where you put them in your city. And so that's the regulation that you would have to adopt. You would have to adopt something that says that they would have to be in an R3 zone or a C2 or L1 or whatever zoning district that would work, but you would have to provide some place within your city for it to be located. So it's not to keep it out, it's just to where to put it. So, I mean, maybe what we can do is we can have Lynn give you some ideas as to where would be an appropriate place to put them if they want to come into your town, and have that be properly staffed and brought back to you. So if you do want to make a change to allow for the adoption of a law, we do allow these in our city, but this is where they're going to be. And if you limit them to a specific area, it may not be where they actually want to go, and so they may move down the island a little bit, or they may go to mainland. But at least you're giving them an option somewhere within the city. So, and with the kind of money that these companies make, having them pay a $500 a year BTR or, you know, some other regulation fee like that, that's not going to scare them away. They'll just make that on their first tenant, their first customer, their first client, patient, whatever they call them these days. So,
If it pleases the commission, is it okay to have the city manager go ahead and do a plan or see if something and report back to the commission?
yeah.
Something where not desirable.
We don't want them in the residential areas. We don't
Oh,
have residents.
absolutely.
So let's just go there.
Right.
We're not gonna put them,
Right.
we're not gonna put them, I mean, R3. Why would a condo?
Yeah.
That's the problem, you know,
But
they
would
can go
a-
anywhere.
if you did it, yeah.
Not in my backyard. Everybody's gonna say,
No, of course.
not in my backyard. I don't want it.
But if you have to do it, if I'm understanding the city attorney, but it's
Right.
somewhere that's not desirable for them to want to go, would a condo not be desirable for them, what they're looking, spending their money-wise?
I open up.
Yeah, Bill, actually, that's a good question for you.
Regulate them then. So maybe it would be a double hurdle for them to get a car.
Right.
Not that we want to put any more pressure on the condominium.
Because if we said condominium or
Right.
R3, and then the condo associations pass things in their bylaws saying, no, you can't have this, would it work like that?
I'm in favor of regulation. I just, go ahead and narrow it down so cities have to waste time on putting them in R1 and R2. That's not gonna happen.
Well, you may
Absolutely not.
you may find you may find a location that is R1 or R2, and that is, for example, on Gulf Boulevard, that is on a corner somewhere, and it would be appropriate, even though it's R1 or R2.
Is that specific to the lot number?
It-
You say R1, they can come to my house.
We're going to give you a zoning district in a location from 145th to 151st, somewhere around, you know, yes, we can limit it to an area, not just a specific zoning district.
But
So-
remember one thing, guys, we've gotten rid of most of the people that stumble down the streets at 10 a.m. or noon or 3 o'clock on our beaches. The last thing we really want are tourists coming to our beaches and seeing this. That's the primary problem.
That's why you make it in a place where it's not desirable to have.
I'm telling you, in a town that's 2.5 miles long and a mile wide, I'll tell you where, if that's within 2 blocks of my house, I'm raising holy hell at the next Board of Commissioners meeting.
Me too.
No, exactly.
Not in
So,
back here.
right. So when you say meet with the planner and find something undesirable, I'm gonna come back empty-handed. I can
Yeah.
tell you what the answer is gonna be. There's nowhere to go with this. There's nowhere to go with it. Right. So, I mean, I think we have to just, pretend for a moment that there ain't anywhere to go with it, and what's our next step. I
But
mean,
we also have
we'll
to-
do our due diligence. I'll have Lynn take a look at it tomorrow, but I can tell you what's gonna happen. I mean, think of one place in town that's not within 3 blocks or 2 blocks of a residence or a condo building. You want that sober house next to where you're gonna go vacation with your kids or raise your kids or whatever? Come on, it's just not gonna happen.
I can tell you they have it on St. Pete Beach, and it's not pleasant.
Right. So I don't know if it's just if it's, just like a hurricane, you can't do much about it, and when it comes, you just gotta deal with it. I don't know what the solution is. It doesn't sound like it's very clear cut, but to make a designation and say, if we get a sober house, we're gonna put it here.
But remember, they don't have to come in and ask for a license.
Right.
That's our problem. They're in before you even know it.
I
Right.
thought they closed the one in Seminole down with the license.
They did. It took 4 years.
Denied the license.
I think we just gotta keep our eyes out and make sure that we do what we need to do to, either prohibit it or keep it from coming or whatever the case may be. But like, you wanna upset an entire district or neighborhood, go ahead and say, if we get a sober house, we're gonna put it there.
We don't obviously upset anybody. I mean, that's not the goal. But can we say that if a sober house wants to come to the building, can we say that?
I have to read these two bills. I'm not really sure. According,
What's coming,
yeah,
as
this,
opposed to, they don't have to tell us.
yeah.
Let's workshop it again next month. Digging around. And I mean, we'll do what we can from a zoning perspective to take a look. Industrial site, the old public works district, but even there, you don't want that.
No.
We've got the marina, we've got everything. There's not enough desirable.
Well, Tom, if we're lucky, 582 will get heard this week on the floor. Otherwise, they're going to be out of session, and it won't get heard. And we're only stuck with the House bill, and it doesn't go into effect until July of this year.
So 30 days, we might know more.
We could know more tomorrow.
Okay. Why don't we just workshop it again in May, and before we adjourn, let's talk about that workshop meeting, because I think we should have one in May, but the current schedule would put it the day after Memorial Day. If anybody's traveling or doing anything, we might want to adjust that date a little bit.
So it's okay with the commissioner for us to refer this to the May workshop and to find out what's going on in Tallahassee?
Absolutely.
Well, and to have, I think, City Attorney Trask do a little homework on his end from a zoning perspective. City staff will do theirs, and then we'll reconvene on the issue and see what we can do.
The whole idea today was to make you guys aware of what could happen. I'm sure you guys remember the emails I used to send out on Mondays, and I used to send to all the commissioners. It'd be a paragraph this long of what happened in your district this month. We don't need those emails going out anymore. Not from this commissioner, anyway. You guys will have to forgive me, but I've got to
No,
get to the
you-
hospital.
And give Tom all our love, Elaine.
I will do that.
All right.
I've talked to you about it.
Mr. Mayor, from a scheduling standpoint, we've got a lot of things here that I think will go relatively quickly, except for the last 2 items. So if you want to pound out a couple more and then maybe take a bathroom break, we can do that.
Go ahead and let's move forward with item F, discussion on vacancy for library board.
This is a very simple one. I've authorized the city clerk to begin the advertising for it already. We have a vacancy on the library board that was created by Brian Borneman. Due to an employment issue, he's no longer available to serve. So I believe this one would then finish out this term, which was the 2-year term. The reason why this gets a little confusing is the other appointee, who is Mr. Steve Kochek, he got the the 1-year term. So in a matter of a couple of months, we'll be coming to you again advertising for that. Now, he can reapply for his, but anyone can apply for it. But we do need to replace Mr. Borneman. So as of now, the advertisement is out there. We have 0 applications in, so if anyone knows anybody that would like to serve on the library board, they usually take summers off. I think they meet 9 months out of the year, something like that. But we're looking for somebody, if somebody's got a good, somebody in their district that would be interested, so on and so forth.
Marilyn, real quick, what is the times that they meet? So it's 4 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. Next discussion on RFP for land lease at north end of Village Boulevard.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, this is something that you can or can't do. We've done the staff work on it, and I would have never even known the property was there, except we were informed that there was a group that wanted to lease it from us. So we surveyed it, we drafted an RFP. The best way to describe it is the bushy palm treed area right in front of the Bamboo Beer Garden. It's a triangle of property that you own. If you drive by it tonight, you would say that makes sense to put some seating there. They're the interested party. They were informed that if we did put this, we'd have to put it out in some sort of competitive nature. The Thai restaurant might be interested in it, but we would put it out in an RFP similar to the Snack Shack. You know, if you want to lease it, here you go. The highest rent per month would win the prize, so to speak. We would clear out some of the bushes, but we keep a bush border, if you will. But it would certainly, I mean, it'd be visible from Gulf Boulevard. It would be good for Johns Pass, and again, it's wide open. Anybody that wants to bid on it, so it's a very fair and equitable way to lease it out if you're interested. When you drive by it, it makes all the sense in the world. If you don't know the piece of property, I think I spoke to the vice mayor about it, and she's like, "Where is this?" But she found it either on the survey or Google Maps. But it makes a tremendous amount of sense from at least a staff standpoint. If you guys want to lease it out. We're in a mode of inventing any new revenue streams we can, and it's just sitting there, and it's just one more thing to take care of. The maintenance of it now would become the responsibility of whoever wins the RFP.
Question. So I take it I've got a consensus to move forward?
You'll get the bid award at it. Oh. Go ahead.
I'm concerned about it because we know no one wants to rent the property. Bamboo Beach. I'm sure they want to put more tables out there. Because I have that area, several calls about noise complaints, what's going on there, how long they do it. So it's not going to help the situation. Really, I'm going to get a phone call if I get more people out there.
The noise, though, is generated by the music, not the patrons.
I believe that noise is generated by the music. So if we're going to offer this to you, we can offer it to you, or we can make some concessions.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can say, all right, if we do this, you've got to turn your band and push them out toward the common, or somebody.
We can ask them to redirect their sound. Remember, this is the one that.
I'm not saying they're going to get the bid. It could go out to bid, and that's going to be down the road. That'll be 60.
No, it's ready to go.
The RFP's ready to go.
Yeah, everything's ready to rock. So I mean, if you guys want to
But
pull
once you
the
got
trigger.
the bid, then you can make the condition, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly
Because you
work
don't
with
know
them.
if the Thai people aren't
don't know
going to
who's
have
gonna
music
get it.
out
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
But if you go ahead and put the RFP out there, let's say
Sure.
they end up with the numbers, well, under these conditions.
Yeah.
If they
Well, I
don't
mean,
accept it, then you take.
I think you're talking. I think you got two separate issues here, and I think remember these are the same guys that are renting the Snack Shack from us. I mean, if we want to work with them in some fashion, I think we can work with them regardless of whether or not they do that. Remember, these are the guys. They beat us. They beat us in court on this noise issue, and I have documented proof that they use a decibel reader at every shift change in regards to our noise issue. So they're, as far as they're concerned, they're playing by the rules.
I'm right here. You got me found.
Can't tell
Hang
me
on,
how to buy it.
hang on a second.
Hold on, guys. I'm just saying, okay, let me just go here. I'm not trying to shut the door on this
Yep.
at all. I'm always looking for extra revenue. absolutely. But I just want to say, if I go down there and talk to Alan, I want to find out where final goal. His final goal is going to be more season, more people, more money. That's everybody's final goal. That's a goal. And that's a good for business. That's good for John's back.
But I think the noise issue, again, and Guy, I know your pain. I've been down there, and I know what you're talking about. But from an enforcement standpoint, their readings, at least when we are there, are where they need to be.
I want to tell everybody over here, I want to tell what's happening. I call the sheriff department. The girl gets there. The deputy gets there. Well, they're allowed to play till 11 o'clock. It's 9:30 on a Monday night, and they're allowed to play till 11 o'clock. I says, you better read your code.
True, right?
Then the music just stopped. I said, what? They stopped because before you got there, somebody called the office or the manager, and the music stopped. I have not find out whoever is they call when I call in, or my neighbor calls in, because by the time the sheriff gets there, the music stopped. Now, something's wrong there. That's why I want to tell it to everybody over here. There's nobody here, but it's wrong. Not that I complain. I don't want to complain. I say to them, you can do whatever you want during the day. Leave me alone at night. 7 to beyond. The decimal should be down. The decimal, my friend, I mean, you come in my living room, I got double pane. I'm on the side of water. I challenge anyone to come in my house and see if you can hear the music. I'm on the end by the water side, and you hear the music.
Guy, if they turn their speakers around and
They don't. The girls there. I mean, I talk even to the people that work there. The girls that get drunk, they get high, and there is no mercy. I talk to the manager. I send him texts to turn the music down. I got texts that I send it to the manager.
I think we're talking about two separate issues. I would like to talk to the owner and see if I can't get some traction with them. I mean, we're working with them every day lately over at the Snack Shack. So I think the noise issue, if I can help Guy out with that, I'd certainly.
It's not only me, sir.
Well, I mean, the group down there.
And cross the street.
Sure. But then back to this one, and again, you're right, they may get it, they may not get it, who knows who's going to be interested in it. But I would say the entire area, and Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe has room for 3, like, high-top tables and some seating. I mean, you're going to get 8 people where this area is, and that's about it. I think it's more of an attraction type thing. You see some action, and so you pull in there, or whatever the case may be. But the noise issue is something, separate that I think maybe we can work with Alan. In fact, I've got to meet with them tomorrow.
No, it is a separate issue, but it's an issue that I've already had to deal with in the past. And if I give them more dirt, they're going to make more noise. That's just going to happen. There's more people there. The more people you have anywhere, it's going to be more noise. And that's something we'll have to deal with. There's like 5 palm trees here.
Palm stay.
Everything palm tree stays, just the shrubs.
Just all the palm stay. We're just going to take out a little bit of
It's going to clean up that whole corner. It's going to make John's Pass more attractive coming in. And I think there's a way that, as Shane said, we're working with the folks from the Bamboo regularly. We were going to do something with the Elks Lodge a few years ago with that glass panel.
Exactly.
Maybe that's something that we can get Alan to consider down there that would help out the neighbors, the surrounding neighbors. So I think we can open up.
I think we got to go to the ownership, not the management.
Right. We'll go straight to the owner.
And I think we might get some traction there.
Okay.
So what I'm looking for from the commission is just a thumbs up to release the RFP. The bid award would come to you again. So the issue's still, it's get another kick at the cup.
Okay. Thank you. Same answer. Next discussion on increase in fees for business tax receipts.
This is our opportunity to raise the fee. I think, Madam City Clerk, when was the last time? 2007 you adjusted it. You can raise it up to 5%. This is not a huge increase. The 5% represents about a $3,500 adjustment to your budget. You haven't increased it in quite some time. Staff recommendation, of course, is to increase it, but this is certainly up to the Board of Commissioners whether or not you want to make this adjustment. The business tax license is always, on the chopping block at the state in some form. I don't know if it's, ever going to go away or not, but since there hasn't been an adjustment made in 7 years, you may want to consider it's a 5% hike
Not
up
much
to.
of anything, very short change.
Yeah, but $3,500. $3,500.
Oh, I'm not saying not to do it, I'm
Yeah,
just saying
okay.
that
I don't think it's going to be a huge burden to any business owner, I think is the issue that Pat's saying. And as long as we're in the game, costs have certainly escalated more than 5% in 7 years, so your call.
I was under the impression that the attorneys beat the business tax. Yes, no, who beat that? Somebody beat that, so that they don't have to, the realtor? Oh, sweet.
They need better counsel.
I like it, because I went through our list here, and we charge attorneys, and I thought that was the taboo, but that's good. But it
it's
was
amazing how many things is on that list, right, Chief?
Boy, there's a lot on that
I
list.
couldn't
isn't
believe we had all
Man.
that activity on our project.
We slapped them tattoo parlors, don't we? What? You're coming, give me that money. No, I'm just gonna go there. All right, yeah, let's stay up to pace, just with our salaries for our employees, we should stay up to date. And then, in 10 years, it's not at 20%.
Right.
I'm good with the 35.
So, Amy, does that adjustment need to be made? It's included into the fee schedule, so do we need to do anything further from an ordinance standpoint, or read it? So we'll have that on the next BOC meeting. If you have any, constituent calls or concerns, and you want to run them to staff, feel free.
Who sets the number? We do?
Well, the percentage hike, but I think he's talking about the differential between a tattoo parlor and a motel.
That was
I mean,
started years and years ago.
yeah, I was just gonna say that was probably set in the 70s or whatever.
Yeah, okay, so maybe we should take a look at it. Right,
And nothing has changed there.
some big changes.
With the 5%.
Up to 5.
Statute.
I can't go down, I can't decrease.
Yeah.
Just can't
Just
go over 5%.
I can't decrease more 5%.
You can't go over 5%.
No, you can't go over 5%.
Either way,
Either way, up or down.
up or down.
I'd like to be changed. Did I say that on camera? I'm sorry. I don't like to be changed at all.
Ay, ay, ay.
Okay, I'm just trying to make a little, this meeting's getting long, what I'm saying.
Well, as long as
You're fine, we're gonna give you a coffee break here in a
Getting a
couple
little-
of seconds
getting
here.
a little giddy.
Change is good.
All right,
Get
yeah, no, that's good, 3565.
So you're good.
Okay, we'll have an ordinance then
Okay.
prepared by the city attorney for the next meeting. Oh, it's already done. That's right.
So it,
All right.
I can handle the $3.50 to my business, okay. Next, discussion, discussion on establishing the Board of Commissioners 2014-2015 Policy Handbook. Did any commissioners have anything to bring up on that, or any changes they'd like to see?
No.
There was a struck version in your packet. The only thing that I want to bring up, and Amy
I was gonna-
probably wants to bring up, and good thing Elaine's not here, and I know Commissioner Shantz is going to kill me for this, is the workshops in the conference room, I never liked, but now there's a reason that I don't like them, and it's the sound for broadcasting it is literally not audible. And we'd have to do some adjustments in there if we want to make that work. And obviously, this ship is going down, so I would hate to spend some money in there. But it does. I mean, we can make it work if you want to keep them in there, or you can do a workshop like this down here, and instead of up on the dais, if that's a
Nicer.
yeah.
I don't like it up there. I like when people have to come and have to look up at us like we're some big cheese.
You are the big cheese, but
Well, maybe so, but I don't want to fly.
yeah, I got you.
Sit down here with everybody.
So that's the only additional change that I think, and I personally would prefer that if we could do it in here. I mean, even just from workshops, we don't have presentations like we used to just to, fill some agenda space. But I mean, we've got people that come talk to us. We got constituents that want to come, and that room gets packed fast. It's just not a big enough conference room to do that. So if you're cool with it, maybe we do it down in this room, but down here, if that jives.
And I think Commissioner Poe would be okay with this because,
Yeah, I'm not.
why spend money on money?
It's just
going down in a couple of months.
Yeah.
He's gone, so.
Yeah, I mean, we can revisit it with the new building. In fact, after the elections, we'll have our new building, and so we can decide then. We'll have a conference room that we can see if we want to use or if we want to do it in your new auditorium, which is going to be neat too, so.
I do have something. About a year or so back, we talked about the Home Pride Award. I thought we were going to bring that back.
No, I think the conversation was to eliminate it. And we don't have to. I mean, we can do it, but it's just one more. It was something different. I think in the '60s and '70s and maybe even the '80s. The problem is, sure, you can find one house and do that, and you've got 14 people upset with you because they weren't chosen. It's a difficult thing to do. The business award was hard enough. And so, I mean, if you want to bring it back, we can, but it's certainly our recommendation to do away with
I don't
it.
think we need to have any. Got lots of business, lots of things going on in town. You don't have to give business awards, you don't have to give equal property awards. They do get offended. I mean, I really got offended in my neighborhood twice. A property there got the award for landscaping around their house. And I thought, give me a break. 2 times they got it. And I figured my house looked as good as theirs, so you see, that's just the point of view.
And I'd hate for somebody with the illegal house renting get the award.
Right? Oh, good point.
Travis, I didn't know what you said.
Nothing. I'm good. I'm good.
No, but I'm
not going to repeat it twice.
telling you, I mean, I wasn't.
No,
on the
you're
commission.
good.
I was nothing in the city at the time.
Yeah.
But I thought,
You've always been something.
because I gathered up the awards and I delivered them, right? Amy? Is that not true? That's true. And I delivered the picture of those awards to the family, and they could have cared less. I'm telling you, they could have cared less.
But doing the business awards, I think is a good thing, and it's not really that hard because there's going to be, when we go into this, I think we're getting probably pretty close to nominate somebody else, but it seems like each year when I'm watching businesses and tourism, there's one that sticks out. I've noticed there's one that sticks out that gets a lot of press or gets a lot of PR, or you notice a lot of, when you're having events around the city, they're getting a little bit extra traffic because of just certain things they've done in the community or out there in the business world.
Mayor, I can give you 12 complaints about people who said, why did Waltz get it? No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, then, probably
But let me
somebody
tell
don't
you
even like my
something,
idea for
Travis.
this year then.
Well,
Let me say something for just a second.
12 out of
This
4,200, I'm not going to worry about it.
That is the job of the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
That is not a job for the city commissioners. That's what the Chamber of Commerce is for, because they know the business. They hear about the business. That's the business organization group, is the Chamber of Commerce. And that's tough, because there was a lot of discussion about that. And I loved it. I thought it was great, what you suggested, Travis. It was wonderful. But I heard a lot of static too, and I said, well, really, it was just the commission was trying to be really nice for somebody who had really suffered something really bad. What else could I say after I said I'm sorry?
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
For you, it was around, well, that was the mayor's, he must go there. Well, you know how people
Go
are.
everywhere in Madeira Beach.
Yeah. Well, you have to have, thick skin on your shoulder, but it was a nice thing we did. It was an outstanding thing. I was emotionally beside myself that night when I saw that meeting. But it was a wonderful thing that we did. But I do believe that is a Chamber of Commerce project, not ours. I mean, I think there's things that we do and things that we shouldn't do, but I don't think that's a city.
Oh, and I totally respect your opinion because you definitely have a little more experience.
Well,
I
I
do.
mean, I always tell you, this is my
Just a little.
opinion,
Not
perhaps
a lot.
not shared by all, but this is my opinion.
No, that's
think
fine.
like
I
that.
appreciate that, Commissioner.
Well, here's one to consider, if you want to keep it, Mr. Mayor, we can certainly do that, but, for example, if Dave is running the greatest landscaping business in all of Pinellas County, how are you gonna know about it, and are you gonna give him the award? Or the federally run post office, we know sells the most, cancer stamps during that time. Are we going to give the post office the business of the award? Or what if we've got the highest trafficked Subway sandwich shop in all of Florida? Are we going to give them the award? What we're doing is you got to be of a certain public, I don't even know what the right term is, but you got to have X amount of public visiting that business in order to probably qualify, because otherwise you don't know if walking into that landscaping business if Dave runs the most successful landscaping business in Pinellas County. And so I think it is a little bit skewed, it maybe is the right word, and subjective is a very good term. So completely up to you, but I can tell you, I think it angers more people than it excites. And I think the Waltz and the horrible state of his health and all that was a nice gesture, but beyond that, I mean, how are we going to determine who the next one is? Hooters is a great example. What if we've got the most successful Hooters in the state of Florida? Are we going to give them the city business award?
Absolutely.
Wow. Wait a minute.
I mean,
I've never seen a reaction on the city attorney's face.
call
That was awesome.
call it what it is.
Wait a minute. I didn't know you could excite Tom with
It's not a perfect science, and I think at a certain point, it's almost, sometimes it might even be a sympathetic gesture, in which case I sure don't want your award.
But
So,
I think we can push it over to the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah,
And I
that's their
think they
job.
would
It's
embrace
Maybe
their
that's
that.
something we need to discuss
That would
with the
embrace it.
chambers. I mean, there's two chambers trying to work
that would
with
be my
DRB.
next issue, is what
Because they do
chamber
that
are you going to
anyway.
ask to do it, and so on
You
and
can
so
create
forth.
troubles with two chambers.
They
Right,
do that on their own anyway. We don't
They
have
do.
to ask them.
they
Yeah,
do.
they do that anyway.
They do that.
So,
All right.
if, I'm glad we had the conversation. If you're looking at pages 11 and 12, that's where these fall. The Volunteer of the Year Award, I would like to keep implemented only because we have a volunteer,
Yeah.
department, if you will. But the Home Pride Award, and if it be the will of the commission, we would delete old item C, current item B, in regards to the Business Recognition Award too. Or you guys can save this for a later date and sleep on it and
But
do what you will.
I can live with it.
I think the way that we left it, first of all, it was going to be quarterly, right? And then we moved it to annually, and then commissioners were going to make a recommendation, basically. So that's pretty much the way we would handle it if you want to leave it in there. But subjective is the right word. I think you have to be a certain type of business to even be considered or recognized, because there's a whole lot of businesses that go unrecognized.
They do. So I might change it and even it.
We just delete that section.
Yeah, and that's that. I was gonna recommend John's Pass Cottages.
Ah.
1946, folks. We've been there since 1946.
One more reason to.
Okay, when was the city incorporated? 47.
It could have been your year. It could have
I'm
been
just
your
saying,
year.
Never have been business of the year. I have never been business of the year. I'm not happy. No, I love Madeira Beach.
yeah, that's right, Terry. You ought to get that award. You've been there
No,
longer
I don't
anyway.
want it now. No, it's a
Now you
sympathy.
don't want it.
I don't want it.
Now you don't want it, Travis.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I think we'll do, you think we can fly through item I real quick, and then we'll take a little 10-minute before, because Jay's going to get a little heavy.
I'll tell you. Well, no,
I'm
I
heavy
think
on the coffee.
Jay's a pretty easy one, but
Okay.
K, L, and M is what's going to keep us rolling here. Tell me, or
Oh,
item I.
discussion on RV parking in
This
John's
is
Pass
something
Park.
that the previous commission put into place. I think we have how many spots down there, Dave?
I don't know, but I couldn't find it.
Well, you can't
There's
find them.
not
six
and I'll
RV
tell you,
signs.
if you've got any sizable RV, you're not even in that parking lot, and if it's packed, you're not driving around in it. And so we have yet to see one parked there, and this was scheduled to come
Couldn't
back to
find
you
it. They're
guys.
not marked.
They're signed.
I think they're marked. On the wall, on the
Oh,
back.
wall.
Okay.
They're there. It's signed.
I walked it the other day. What are we getting rid of? I don't know, Mark. Just couldn't find them.
Yeah, I don't know, what is
Now,
it?
what are you drinking up there, Tear Bear?
Staff recommendation, obviously, I believe it was Commissioner Oakley, and I think the reason behind it, I think, made sense. We were parking RVs at the marina, we're parking them wherever, and we wanted to encourage, RVs to visit Madeira Beach, but it just didn't ever get any traction, and so we'd like to just take down the signs, make it normal parking, and leave the issue alone.
Just gonna do signs, not to read. Right
We'll take down the signs that Commissioner Lister can't find.
Yes, please.
So we'll get Dave on that tomorrow.
Everybody good with it?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, discussion on potential debt issue related to stormwater drainage and roadway improvement projects.
Let me start with this, and then we'll hand it off to the finance director. What you're going to get, if anyone is, the adverse part of this argument is going to say, you're going to borrow money to do stormwater and roads. And that's not necessarily the case, but it could be the case. What this does is create the ultimate flexibility for you to handle roads and stormwater however you want. Basically what this is going to say is you're going to pass this ordinance if you do, and in 3 years or 2 years you decide, you know what, we're going to borrow and do a substantial road improvement, stormwater improvement. You can pay yourself back from the bond proceeds for the resources and frankly the money that you're spending today. That's all this does. As we sit today, and Wayne's still here, I'll be happy to announce this today. We received a $1.3 million grant from SwiftMud for the purposes of the Boca Ciega stormwater road replacement project that we've got in the queue. Our engineer now has, I think, identified, Vince, help me if I'm wrong, Dave, I don't think this email came to you because you were still out for medical reasons, but I think there's eight separate projects that he identified in that what needs to be done. And you're not going to replace every road in town and stormwater. I think you've got probably, well, you have 8 issues that we need to address, but this is not like a total replacement. But what this funding is available on an annual funding basis, on a cycle. And it took some staff resources and some work on behalf of the engineer, but $1.3 million is a chunk of change when it comes to some of these road projects. The commission should be very proud that they qualified, and staff, I got to thank them, they did a lot of work on it. But if we do this on an annual basis, 5 years from now, you've got all your issues addressed, and what we've done is triaged it. We had some complaints the other day. We had a downpour and the highest tide probably of the year, and Boca Ciega flooded, and we've got mud on our face because of it, or egg on our face because of it. I mean, there was nothing we could do, but we got to fix that problem or try to alleviate it as best we can. So that being said, I certainly don't want you to think, you know what we should do? We should borrow $15 million and do a citywide sweep and fix all the stormwater and fix all the roads. And that could or could not do it. I think we need to take this on a case-by-case basis, triaged based on flooding, which we've done, and apply for these available dollars every funding cycle. There's no reason why we shouldn't apply for that. And again, we've got probably half the project paid for. Now we got to come up with our half. That's going to be the next chore. But when you get 1.3 of a almost $3 million project paid for, that's good news. So staff recommendation, and Vince cut me off here because I know I'm getting long-winded, is I want you to pass this. I think it's a good idea, but I don't necessarily know if you're ever going to have to employ it. But it does give you flexibility in 3 years when Crawford's gone or there's a new commission and you guys say, hey, let's borrow $10 million and do stormwater improvements or roads. It gives you the flexibility to reimburse you.
Yeah, that's basically it. So there's 2 ways we could fund the different stormwater and streets projects that we keep talking about. One is to issue some type of bond and try to tackle everything in a short period of time after that. The other is to do what we're doing now, which is try to fund everything on a cash basis and see where these various grant applications land us and try to do it incrementally as the funding allows. This reimbursing resolution would just allow us to pursue a bond and reimburse some of the costs that we have incurred already.
So it's completely non-obligatory is the term I'm
Correct.
using. I don't know if that's
Correct.
a correct term, but you're not obligating yourself to anything. It just gives you some flexibility. The $1.3 million is hopefully maybe is even a headline, but don't bank on that every year. You know, these projects get submitted and then they're, I think, evaluated based off a need and, you know, a number of different criteria. But we have some concerns in town. You know, we all read that stormwater study. I mean, we've got some things where I think we're going to qualify for this, and our engineer is confident that we'll qualify for a couple more funding cycles. The $1.3 million now is not hasn't been voted on yet. That's safe to say that it gets voted on by the Swift Mud Board. Swift Mud Board? Yeah, Swift Mud Board. In September, if you remember, I had asked you all to contact them, email them, call them. That had a tremendous amount of traction. So I don't think a lot of boards probably do that. So thank you, because you're probably a primary reason why we got that. But barring a hurricane or a sinkhole that sucks up Madeira Beach, we should get that vote in September. And so maybe the headline is delayed a couple of months there, Wayne, but at least we've gotten the indication that we're in line for that money.
The reason this reimbursing resolution is time sensitive is because it has to be approved within 60 days of the first invoice for any capital outlay associated with the project. And we just had our first invoice from Caledesi Construction that's doing the Normandy section of this project. So with your consensus, we can get the resolution on the next agenda, and nothing will happen from that point, but we'll just have the option available if we need to use it at some point.
Commissioner, what's your pleasure?
Question, it just, any bond has to have monies dedicated to paying off that bond. So when you say it's unobligated, that doesn't mean that we don't have to have the money to pay it.
No. What non-obligatory in the if it is, I don't know if it was in a fashion that you don't have to. You're not obligating yourself to bond for the project, and you can bond and not have a dedicated revenue stream, but that certainly changes how it goes.
That was
But
my question.
yeah,
So this is a bond that has a non-dedicated revenue.
you're not even talking about a bond. Yep. If you go out for bond in future years, what this is allowing you to do is pay yourself back for what we're doing today. The Normandy Road, for example. So if you want to say, hey, we need some money in the general coffers because we spent it 3 years ago and now we're going to bond for a project that we did before, that it's just allowing you to do that. That's it.
The reimbursement.
Right. Our plan is to not
Yes.
have you borrow
Right.
anything, I think, right now at least.
So then, my next question, thank you. My next question would be, does that deter any available grant money in the future?
No, having the reimbursement resolution shouldn't have any impact on that. Now, if we were to go forward with an actual bond issue,
Right.
and we had that available,
Then
that
would
may
deter.
impact it.
Sure.
I don't know that offhand, but I would think that would impact it much more so than just having this procedural resolution in place.
Right now, the goal is to pay cash, apply and get every grant dollar you can, and phase this baby in. After Boca Ciega, the next quadrant is the fixes on what's the street that floods so significantly, 140th? Yeah.
There won't be a lot of road work there.
Right. One of, increased outfalls, those types of things. So we're going at this in a triaged fashion, and it seems to be working. And like I said, you can't, if you do this in this way, you take advantage of all those with mud dollars.
And actually, good job on you staff and working with Mr. Carrier and getting that $1.3 million grant. That's outstanding.
That was a big one.
That's a lot of money.
It is.
I've seen a lot of cities spending some money on stormwater right now, but I haven't heard about a lot of people getting grants for it.
You and me both.
Yeah.
You and me both.
Very
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I don't have a problem setting this like this.
Commission, y'all good? Okay with this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's pretty sure we're gonna get it.
It's pretty.
I mean, other than a check not laying here in the
Yeah.
desk yet.
Right, right.
All right, guys, at this time, we'll take a 10-minute recess.
Good, I can get more.
Next item, discussion on RFP for replacement of dogs at Beaver, Stadium.
Yeah, let me start now. Let me swallow them. Hand it off to Dave. We have a
Come on.
There we go. I'm
Here
good.
we go.
We have an $800,000 budget for certain dock improvements at the city marina. $500,000 of that is city levy, city dollars, and $300,000 of it is a grant that Dave was able to get. The project has morphed or evolved, and we want you to be comfortable with the specs. But at one point, I think Dave told me this morning he's been working on this fuel dock since 2010, or this whole project for quite some time. So the fuel dock needs to be replaced, and we'd like to replace that with some sort of floating dock that is maintenance-free, some sort of composite material, that kind of thing. The charter docks need repair.
Repair and maintenance, repair, and replacement, which is what we can basically do at this point.
Right, along with B-Dock as well. But if we don't replace B-Dock, and frankly right now we're not permitted to replace it, but rather maybe give it a remodel, if you will, repair and replace where we have to, depending on where the pilings are at from a structural standpoint. You can afford to put in some lifts, and from after speaking with the mayor, and I think, Pat, you probably experienced this when you were the mayor, these lifts are money makers. Everyone's putting them in everywhere, and we've put in two already, and they're already rented. We were able to get that done relatively quickly, and so what we're asking for is approval to put in 7 more. I think you get a higher, well, that's not fair to say, but the lift that we installed is for a $500,000 boat. A brand new $500,000 boat, so it certainly changes. There'll be newer boats staying out at the marina, I guess is a safe way to say it. But not only does he pay us a handsome rent on that lift every month, that frankly pays for itself in about 2.5 to 3 years. The life of the lift is about 15. But now he's buying all of his fuel at the city marina, and he's buying his bait and his beer and sodas and sandwiches and all those types of things, everything that we offer at the marina out there. So I think these lifts are a money generator, and we should take a look at that. Dave's permitted to have 10 of them total. We'd have 10 of them out there. And so with that, what you'll get then is a spec approval for a floating fuel dock of composite material, and then the repairs, at least on the commercial dock, don't have to go out for RFP because they're under $15,000. We'll have to get some costs from a variety of different companies per our own purchasing policy. And then we kind of just, we need to visit the B-Dock and then how much that's going to cost. But I think Dave mentioned this morning that it actually involves, I found out that we've got bad worms in Madeira Beach. I didn't know we'd have bad worms, but we've got bad worms. So we have to have a diver go in and check out the structural integrity of the piling system. But if you're comfortable with that, so we're going to rehab the charter area and B-Dock, replace the fuel dock, and install some lifts. And I think those lifts should go in sooner than later. Gulfport just bid all this stuff out, and so they have contracts that we can piggyback off of. The expenditure will obviously be over $15,000, so you'll have to approve that expenditure, but I think we should get going on that right away. So unless you have any concerns about that, that's how we would recommend that you move forward. If you want, what are your alternatives? I think you would be probably appropriating more money at some point to replace everything instead of let's rehab these things and get another 10 or 15 years of life out of them and budget accordingly so that in 10 or 15 years we can do what we need to do.
Yeah, that's good. Do it like we do the garbage truck. So many years, put money in all the time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and there's significant work to do. We're not just talking about the fuel dock and B-Dock. A-Dock obviously needs attention too. When we talk about renovating B-Dock, we're going to bring it up to where it needs to be, replace the utilities, so on and so forth with that. But A-Dock is going to need attention down the road too. So there's, this is a continuous process. This isn't it. As Shane said, the fuel dock will be all composite material that will spec in the RFP. So the fuel dock and all of the charter boat area will be done, pretty quickly. And then,
And the lifts.
and the lifts. The lifts, for example, Marine Max just put in 20. They were all rented within the first 60 days. It's desirable. It gives people 24-hour access to their boats rather than relying on the forklift driver if it's in a high and dry. If we put in 10, we're going to rent 10. If we put in 20, we're going to rent 20. So it's the way to go. People don't want to leave their boats in the water anymore. For the size slips that we have at the marina, it's a perfect fit, and it's our recommendation as staff. Absolutely. And they're beating down the door. Because the rumor's getting out, the word's getting out. Mm-hmm.
Brought that forward.
I thought we okayed 10 of them back then in
I-
2010.
We're permitted. I've had the permit for 6 years. I've had to renew the permit twice now.
Absolutely. Because they were moneymakers, you already had them paid for, and you already had people waiting in line.
I've had to renew the permit
I'm
twice.
deja
I'm ready.
vuing right now.
You tell me, I'm ready to go.
Right now. Yeah, I was just gonna ask.
The man of action.
I'm
is
just saying,
Matt. I
I've
like
been
this.
down this road before.
Yeah, I think we are doing, or redoing a part of the past, and how, however we got from there to here, that, it is what it is, but, the one that I went ahead and okayed to get done right away was such a good, it was such a good business decision, you couldn't say no. Here's a guy just bought a $500,000 boat, says he'll sign up for 5 years, and the lift is about 21 grand. And you're gonna- installed, and he's gonna pay $500 a month rent. Well, and whatever the math is, and I'll do it wrong, but 30 some months after that,
Yeah.
the money is gravy.
Plus, once again, you got a captive audience. They're buying everything from you.
Everything
From
from
A
you.
to Z.
Yeah,
Fuel especially, so,
it's a no-brainer. We're good with it.
it is a no-brainer. If you guys are okay with that, we'll just put that there's a consensus on the spec, and the RFP, and we'll get that out right away, and we'll get the fuel dock rolling. We'll get the repair to the commercial dock. And then Dave, do we have to be permitted to even do the remodel on B dock, or can we just fix that as?
We're awaiting, there was a meeting today, so we're waiting for word from them on how we're gonna go about that. Right now, we're not permitted to do all of B dock, but with changing gears and doing the repair instead of a replacement, I think that we'll probably be able to do that right away.
Get it done and get it safe, get it rolling, do a little facelift to the marina, and Dave brings up a good point. I don't want to say that this is the only money you're going to spend out there in the next couple of years. We're going to have to appropriate some dollars and get some substantial work done out there, but
Yes.
it's certainly a major step in the right direction. And like I said, you get put 10 lifts in, you're going to get 10 quality tenants, boats, and 10 good clients right out of the gate.
Dave, on the contract.
It's month to month, but with the lifts, we're gonna get yearly.
Get
or
commitments.
Commitments that are gonna be up to 3 years.
Like I said, that first one, the guy said, I'll
5.
sign on the dotted line for 5. So, it was a field decision, and I hope you don't view it as a gutsy call, but some of those times when you get something like that, and here's a guy that just literally bought a $500,000 boat and is fishing in our tournaments and says, if you buy this lift, I'll keep this here for $500 a month for 60 months.
Yeah.
Gotta roll with it.
Everybody's good.
Everybody's good. So we got spec approval. We'll release the RFP. When the fuel dock and that stuff comes back, you'll get a second kick at the can.
Next L, discussion on possible purchase of Don's dock.
Yeah, let me start, and Dave, jump in on me whenever you feel the need, and Vince too. It was made known to us that Don's dock is for sale. It was made known to everybody when there was a for sale sign in front of it. That has come down. I think the current tenant is actively trying to purchase it. It's fair to say that the owner would be interested in doing business with the city. I think from a community standpoint, he's more interested in the city getting that piece of property and getting a presence down in Johns Pass. Right now, the way that it's being operated probably isn't as code compliant as it should be. We've had some complaints. I know the house on the end of the street there is for sale because of the smell, you know, and so on and so forth of what they're doing down there. But the motive should not be to buy that to get the current tenant out. What should your motive be? I think it's reasonable to say that you don't own enough property in your own city. That's a fair assumption. B, to have a presence in Johns Pass makes you at least a player in what happens down in Johns Pass. And then C, I'm going to go back against what I've said before. The city doesn't always get to either buy or build something that makes money. And I think the potential is there to make money at Don's Dock. Also, and I think that this was probably the primary reason why at least staff looked at this in the beginning, is you have a $300,000 budget for transient slips. And where we were going to put the slips, let's just say there's plenty of red tape to cut if we wanted to do that. Also, if you buy Don's Dock, in some massaged version, you're getting your transient slips for free because there's, probably room to, what do you say, Dave, 20?
Yeah, ish.
20-ish.
And they would all be transient.
And they'd all be transient. So now you're running a miniature little marina, little ship store, have your transient slips, sell fuel, sell bait, sell all those things. And I don't think you really take away from your primary marina in regards to that. I think you'll have a different clientele down there. First of all, there's a number of commercial accounts that you'd probably get right out of the gate from people that are, the jet ski guy and the, whoever else down there. So what are the specifics? The specifics are this. The asking price was somewhere in the neighborhood of between 1.5 and 1.6 when they had it listed. I think there's economies of scale that we save on if their listing has expired, which obviously it has because the sign has come down. So the purchase price is in the neighborhood of $1.45 million. You would need to do some repairs to it, we think, and the we think is what we have to talk about. I think what you should do is authorize city staff to enter into some sort of agreement with an engineer or whomever that we've got currently under contract to do some sort of assessment, some sort of condition report of what's going on down there. You also need to know how much it's going to cost to modify the docks and to make it a transient, whatever, 20 slips of transient slips. The area landward has some concerns, and we members of the community have expressed that to us, and so we need to make sure that the seawall's intact and everything is what it is. When we spoke about this at the staff level, we're estimating that the total expenditure would probably be in the neighborhood of about $1.65 million. So then the next question you're going to say is, Shane, how are we going to pay for it? You have two options, and your options are this, and I've been very blessed to come to Madeira Beach with a very large bank account, but that bank account is dwindling because of the amount of community services that you're offering and building projects and parks and those types of things. You could, in theory, pay cash for the whole thing. You're going to deplete your reserves quite significantly, probably to a point, and we all know how Vince is, to an uncomfortable situation with Vince. It's uncomfortable with me, too. You could borrow for it, and in a creative way, pay for it with at least what we have today is a surplus in parking revenues and some cash down. You could put the $300,000 that you have in your transient dock budget down, and the next item is that we've identified some other projects that you could put on the shelf for a while and get this piece of property. The marina is turning a profit. That's good news. So we know that it is a profit center. Like any new business, I don't think it's fair enough for me to say, Dave, if we buy this property, you have to turn a profit in year one, but by year 3, year 4, and I think I've got confidence in Dave to probably break even in year 1 and start making money in year 2. So the idea being she should pay for herself. And, you take out a 10-year note on something like that, keep the debt service at a very manageable level of approximately $100,000. And through a number of different things, we've got it covered, but at the end of the day, she should pay for itself in some fashion. So that's the abbreviated version of this. If you look at item M, you know, the pump out boats, that's, you know, a business that I think we probably want to stay out of, and I think that obligation on the city's end of it, Vince, do you know what that is off the top of your head? Yeah.
75. And if we acquire Don's dock, we put a pump out in there, and so now we're
So now
servicing
we're-
both sides of the
Right.
city.
Yeah.
You know, the sign budget, I think that was 6 figures, 125. We spent a little bit of that on a new marina sign, but that idea was to put up a digital sign. I don't know, if Madera Beach is ready for that, because you'd be installing a sign that you don't let anybody else install. We could do some welcome signs or something along those lines if we wanted to, but I think the mayor is aware, and the commission, you know, we don't own a lot of property on the north and south end of town. It's not our street. We're in somebody else's easement, so it sounds like a simple thing, but it's not, to install welcome signs into the city of Madera Beach. The electrical upgrade, you had $10,000 in there for a engineering study. If we keep any of them, that's probably the one that I'd like to keep, because I think from a budget standpoint, we need to know what that project's going to cost, and we've never really put pen to paper on that. So at the end of the day, I think, you know, I want to know from you guys if the condition, are you committed to this project? Are you interested in it? And then B, the next step is to get some sort of assessment, some sort of appraisal, some sort of condition report. We've done the homework on that. That's going to cost less than $1,000. We've got a, you know, appropriated budget, so we can do that. And then after that, you know, the condition report's going to say, if you buy this for $1.45 million, you have to put X into it, and what X equals is the total number. And then Vince and I would come at you with 2 proposals, basically, or maybe 3. You can pay cash for it. You can do that, but you're going to deplete yourselves pretty thin when you guys come and say, hey, let's do this. Let's install a $15,000 speaker system on the boardwalk. The answer is going to be no. You're not going to have any money. Or maybe it's a combination of the 2, or you can borrow for the whole thing. If you borrow for it, the debt service at this point is very, very manageable. If you want to do that, it certainly gets us through the next couple of years, and then if we can make it a profit center, again, the goal would be to have it pay for itself.
Would it be the same, would it run the same as the Marina Fund? Would it be the same, or would it be a separate fund?
We could do whatever you prefer along those lines. We could run it through the marina or create its own enterprise fund. And that's,
David?
I don't, let's stay out of the accounting aspect of it right now, because I'd really want to think about that. I had some conversations with Vince today in regards to revenue at the marina paying for this, and I'm not as versed in it as I'd like to. Right now, I'd like to say it's a marina. It should be in the marina fund, but the nuances of governmental accounting make that sometimes a tricky thing. So we haven't discussed that yet, and I'd like to get a little bit more knowledgeable about that before I bring that to you guys, and you need to be educated on it as well.
I like the idea, but the thing that explains up here about John Patton, Ron and I are down both. You can't go to John Patton. So we were looking at doing transient docks.
But you had a $300,000, you know, obligation, so you take that off the purchase price, and now all of a sudden you're spending about $1 million to 1.1.
And I think the key is that how far is the tanks and everything, has that been squared away?
Yeah.
The tanks have been squared away. There's going to be a couple of things that are going to have to be addressed, but as Shane indicated, we don't believe at this point that number will exceed 1.65, and it's very doable and manageable.
As far as someone, I mean, my business probably before it changed in direction. It's a very active place. It's sold a lot of fuel, a lot of money coming out of there. And the loop is running, and I'm sure Fisher waste plant. I don't know his opinion or his projections are, because you've been around that place a long time.
Yeah.
And there's
Ever since I moved here.
A lot of positive things. It's just, like I said, we probably want to know what's under.
Well, it's our intention to make it all transient. I mean, it's all going to be transient. We'll still have a couple of the guys that run charter boats that'll come in and out of there, but they won't keep their charter boat there. It'll all be transient docks. When we talk about funding sources, we've got a meeting later this week. hopefully we'll be able to get some transient dollars from the state to offset the cost.
Yeah, whenever the word transient is used, you automatically become eligible for some grant dollars, and we've had a lot of luck lately with applying for grants. So Linda Fisher's coming in to meet with us to see if there's anything out there in the coffers, and Mayor and anybody else with state ties, we might want to see if there's anything in the appropriations budget for land acquisition for transient related issues. But you know, this is a tough one for you guys. I don't envy the spot that you're in, because we've been spending money. I mean, let's just face it, we've been spending a lot of money regardless of the reasons why. And I had a conversation with Commissioner Shantz before about opportunities, and if you pass up on it, you may never get another kick at this cat. And so the timing is either fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it. But this is one where if you look at John's Pass and say, well, where should the city buy a piece of property or get involved? Wow, I mean, this is perfect. We've got a very knowledgeable marina guy that knows how to do it, and he's turned his marina into a profit-making fund for us, and I think the potential is there to just really kill it down there. So we wouldn't bring it to you if we thought it was a dud of an idea, but I think you have to be prepared, and I've had conversations with Commissioner Lister on this. I think you have to be prepared to make the difficult decision to borrow, and that's not popular, but it creates more flexibility for you guys to continue on, and it's not bad to use your credit card if you can pay the bill at the end of the month, and you can certainly pay the debt service on a short-term note. This would probably be a 10-year note. I would recommend putting some money down. You got $300,000 in a budget for transient docks. Put it down. If you cut some of these projects if you want, or delay them, and really, I think you have to show the public that you're prioritizing, and they appreciate that. We're not just spending money because it's sitting there. We are doing what we need to do from a prioritizing standpoint to make good decisions today, so we don't regret it tomorrow.
One of the good decisions that we made was obviously through the city staff was raising the parking fees, and that revenue that was just in the financial statement that we got this month was $400,000. Our debt service for the $4.6 million loan for City Hall was $300,000. So we haven't even touched that budget for debt service, and this is a win-win, win-win, win-win situation. To be in Johns Pass and to have transit docks for people that live in Madeira Beach, 1,000 times. I'll pay you $100 if I can just go have dinner. I'm sorry, sir, you can't keep your boat here. You can't.
Yeah.
You have to move your boat. You can't stay here. I'll fill you up with gas and you're gone.
It's a home run for the city.
It's beautiful.
You can't
It is a wonderful thing, and I know I'm close. I know I'm close, and I know I'm going to get people calling me and say, you can't vote on this because you live right, you don't live right, but I own that property right across the street. So.
Said, I've done there for 15 years, and it was a hot center, and I think the city having a presence down there would actually really help it down on.
Oh,
Saturday,
absolutely.
attracting people to the
Absolutely.
east end of the boardwalk. It's just, right now it doesn't have, what I would call, what we're looking for.
Absolutely. I think it's a great decision. And
Got a
again,
lot of potential, they're not even looking.
It's
So
got
what
potential.
you're looking for right now, city manager, like go ahead and put something together to take a look at.
Well, yeah, I think it's a very simple report, because we got a very simple fee. You don't get much for $750, and that's the estimate that we got. But I think what they'll do is look at the layout of the docks and say, this is what it's going to take to make 22 transient slips.
Right, that and the where the dock house now
Right.
is
And then
currently
everything-
is falling in. There's
Because we know the
issues.
new dock's good. I mean, that was just.
Right.
But
Yep.
it's a little
There's-
like
there's
Reddington Long Pier
issues.
when that got knocked off by the
Right.
barge. They rebuilt that in,
Right.
and that pretty much stabilized Reddington Long Pier to
Yeah.
this day,
Right.
or it would be gone.
It will be. This report will give us. It'll do all the due diligence that we need to do to make sure that we're, doing this correctly.
Right, at the end of the day, you need a number so that you can figure out how to finance it. And then, and you don't have to decide this today, because I know this is new to you, but then and we can look at the next item, decide what you want to do in a tit-for-tat type scenario. Is $300,000 down and borrowing the rest make sense to you? And what direction do we want to give Vince And I think Vince needs to probably put together a couple of scenarios for us, you know. What happens to your reserves if you just pay cash? I mean, how dire is the situation afterwards? He wouldn't give it to me an option if we couldn't do it, so we can do it. But where does that put you guys in your flexibility? And you want to remain flexible. I can't stress that enough, because things pop up. You guys have been throwing stuff at us for the last 24 months, where boom, it pops up, and let's do it and let's get it done. And you can do that because you got money in the bank. But when you don't, it really gets tough. And so I think you're going to look at probably a combination of the two, or a total borrow. And the total borrow, I always say, gives you the most flexibility. But you had a budget for this. I think you should put that budget as a down payment, and then, you know, revisit the merits of some of these other projects, and discuss how much money you want to put down, and then finance the rest in a 10-year note.
Well, we have a continual income from John's Pass Village.
Absolutely.
Every month, we have a continual income.
In regards to the rental?
Yeah,
97,000, it's a little over 100,000 this year.
yeah.
From the board.
I mean, that's just general revenue, right? I mean, we don't appropriate it for anything,
It's
but.
not,
But we appropriated it back in 1987 when we bought the building, that should be for improvements in Johns Pass. That was appropriated back in 87, whether we've changed it or not in
Sure.
2014, I don't care. But that money should be for Johns Pass. And we had a tit for tat with parking a long time ago. You know, Johns Pass is not paying for itself. I hate to reopen old
Yeah,
wounds,
let's-
I'm not gonna do that. But Johns Pass, really, this is just a win-win situation. And we could easily pay for it, and I say, you absolutely borrow the money, because it can pay for itself. It will pay for itself. Dave will sit there today and tomorrow and next week saying, if you own this property, you could make money. I
Well,
guarantee you.
It's on Dave's shoulders, and, you know, he's not gonna get fired if he doesn't turn a profit in year one, but I mean, from an evaluation standpoint, there was no reason that you know, the way that we had accounted for the marina in the past, Dave knows what he's doing. The marina is a profit center based off of, you know, the way that we account for it in a more fair fashion, I guess, than in the
And
past.
I think we tie his hands sometimes by not giving him those 10 lifts that we voted for
Yeah.
several years.
Well, I didn't, you know, that whole issue just kind of came to light, and it's like, geez, you know, like you said, or whoever said, this is a no-brainer, let's put these babies in and rock and roll and make some money.
No-brainer back then.
So you just introduced a brand-new revenue stream into the city of Madeira Beach by installing those things, and like I said, I think I did the math on my iPhone, it was like 32 months, and they're paid for or whatever. But this one, you know, it's got some challenges, but I think, you know, if Dave wants to bring in a boat club, or, you know, however he's gonna charge for the dockage, you know, we've had all those conversations, and I think the potential is there to just, we gotta get some way to go to Johns Pass on a boat and be able to hang out there for a minute.
We're gonna do that anyway. We're gonna get transient docks in Johns Pass, whether we put them at the entrance of the boardwalk or whether we put them at Don's Dock. That's a
Needs to
given.
be
We're
at
gonna
Don's
get,
Dock.
we're gonna get it. This just makes a lot more sense than putting it right in the middle of the boardwalk.
It needs to be
makes a
at
lot
Don's
more
Dock.
sense.
Yeah.
And plus, we own the property next to it, so the opportunity for us to
Absolutely.
expand a little.
expand is there. I mean, this is a win-win for everybody, as you
Definitely.
said.
But
And
I-
it opens up Johns Pass to, you know, not just our residents, but the folks from Treasure Island, St. PB.
Any boaters,
Nobody
it's just
gets to
boaters
Johns
in general. Nobody
Yeah.
can park in Johns Pass on the Madeira Beach side. Obviously on Gators, yes, absolutely.
We have missed the boat.
We missed the boat.
I don't think those docks will be open very much. There'll be boats in those slips all the time.
Yeah, I do too.
You're not gonna lose on that.
Absolutely.
We've even kind of gone over the operational part of it, you know, there's, you know, obviously an operational expense, but we've taken that into consideration too, I think. This is one of those situations, I think you just gotta either jump in with both feet or say this isn't for us.
But Terry, didn't we okay docks down there? Wasn't there a design for docks? Is there no design?
Oh, it's already
Somewhere in
done.
the-
It's already done. The Don's
They're
docks.
down there,
Oh,
aren't they?
yeah. It's already built for 20 slips.
Somebody, you can pull in there?
Yeah,
At Don's Dock? Yes, ma'am.
absolutely.
Because I was gonna say, we did that, I thought.
But right now, it's like
When that
what?
new guy bought it, was when we got into all.
But he paid for it. We didn't pay for any of
No,
that.
he
That was
paid
him
for
just
that.
a permitting
I
process.
think he's got
Six, yeah, we're gonna have to do
large
some modifications, and that's why we say the purchase price might be 1.45, but at the end of the day.
You're gonna have
it's
to modify the docks without question.
Yeah. There's gonna have to be some
I think
modifications
there's only
to the
6 or
docks.
8 slips down there now.
Yeah. So we're
Floating dock.
we're have accounted for that in this. And, you know, once again, transient docks down there.
Win, win.
And the transient dollars, I think, are gonna be there from the state.
Yep, we'll find that out on Thursday, so if you're okay with that, we'll go ahead with the study, get a report back to you, report that back to you, have a better idea if we're eligible for any grant funding or anything like that, and then Vince and I will have, some sort of financing plan or financing options.
I'm excited.
We better go fast, yeah.
Well, we gotta move fast, so that's the final part of this,
Right.
not to make this any longer than it is, but, so there's an existing lease with the tenant down there. Tenant obviously isn't gonna be thrilled about this, you'll probably get phone calls on it. The owners want to, I think, make it a city thing, I think they've got some, nostalgic ties is probably the wrong term, but I think that they would like to, what the city would have planned for it better than, what the current tenant is. I've been informed that the current tenant's trying to purchase the property as well. So what we would do, and Tom, you're gonna tell me out what this one is, they wanted us to sign an agreement that obligates us to buy it when the tenant's lease expires in June of next year. So, we'd obligate ourselves saying, yes, we will purchase it and the deal will go down and we'll take ownership of it in June 1 of next year. There's gotta be a term for that. It's-
could actually take ownership of it now, and then the tenant would be paying you the lease payments that he would have been paying the prior owner.
Yeah, he's got a first right of refusal on his lease though, so what they wanted to do was just run out the lease, and I think that and I don't wanna talk too much about somebody else's lease on the mic, but there's a reason for why they're doing that, and I can explain that to the attorney. But I think probably within the next 60 to 90 days, you're gonna have to obligate yourselves to purchasing this. And, you know, after that, you know, Vince can go through the nightmare of putting whatever he has to do, in a bank loan or another bond together. But the earliest we would take this is, you know, early summer of next year.
But again, with the new revenue source that we have from the parking and the, you know, the obligation that we're gonna have, we're really not gonna spend any ad valorem tax money at all,
No.
at all. Zero tax money.
That is for it to pay for itself.
Right.
Exactly. Okay, just want to reiterate.
And it will.
It will pay for itself. We
We buy our fuel through a state contract, so,
No.
Buying more doesn't do anything for you guys.
no, I mean, it's based off a state contract, so, but we will attract, I mean, that will,
Oh.
you know, it's a satellite marina, it's going to,
Absolutely. And it'll be a
It's going to
branded
change
marina. It'll
things.
be a Madeira Beach marina.
Yeah,
And that's
and-
the whole beauty of John's Pass.
We-
Because there's
I don't wanna-
1,000 people that drove by there, and you know that on boats.
we've already had and I feel safe saying this, we've already had a commitment from several businesses on the boardwalk that says the day you take it over, we start buying all our fuel there, and we're not hauling it in the back of our truck anymore.
Really, I think, you know, I think it's safe to say there's been an outpouring of support on behalf of the merchants that we've talked to in John's Pass saying, go for it. They want us down there. It's not like we'll be the black sheep of the family, so to speak. So, again, you're gonna spend some bucks, but, I certainly think it's a worthwhile endeavor.
Spend money to make money, honey. Anyway.
Cover him, since we kind of covered it, or you want to cover it?
Well, yeah, I think we do, Mayor. I think that's,
Inspection on digital signs, electric, upgrading John's Pass building, help out folks.
right. You approved in your last budget Vince, $125,000 for a digital welcome sign in Madeira Beach. And the reason why I say that maybe we're not ready for that, you know, we do have some digital signage. There's that one that snuck through the cracks or whatever in John's Pass.
Not happy.
No one's happy about that. I think when we say, well, we can put one up and we're going to install it, but we're not going to let you guys do it, that's not necessarily a good business. And so, you know, the Plan Commission is scheduled to take up digital signage, and that may occur someday. But if you're looking at this type of endeavor and you're going to spend $125,000 on a sign, I would say take that out. The ones, then it's like, well, can you maintain what you've got? The marina sign, I think everybody would be, it's safe to say that thing is pretty rough, right? So we approved, I think, an $8,000 expenditure out of the budget to just get that sign refurbished, if you will. We found out that there's a tremendous amount of FDOT right-of-way there, and refurbishing it instead of putting up some sort of monument sign made the most sense. So the remainder of that budget could go towards the purchase of this, and I think I'd probably recommend that. And then if you look at, you know, wants versus needs, you know, the pump-out boat, that whole thing came up when we had poopy water, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about. And we thought that maybe 12 boats were making that happen. That's not necessarily the case, and our numbers and our testing has improved. So to have a boat and staff it to go out there and pump out these boats versus having a pump out station at Don's Dock and one at the city marina probably makes the most sense. So you can do away with that, even though we qualified for a small percentage of that to be paid for by a grant. And then the electrical upgrade in John's Pass, that's one where if I think I'd probably recommend you keeping in, and what that does is you put $10,000 into a budget to hire an engineer to study how much it would cost to run electrical pedestals and light all the palm trees in John's Pass. Cool idea. We have no idea how much it would cost. So if you spend $10,000 on the engineering, at least we can start budgeting for it in some sort of capital plan so we can get that done. Those seafood fests and John Levesque and all those things, they need electricity or they can't maintain. They're bringing in
problem every year.
Every single year, and they have to bring in a considerable amount of generators and things of that sort to just do it. Those festivals need to occur. I mean, just think of Seafood Fest last year and how many people that brought to your town. I mean, you really got to maintain that. So it's completely up to you in regards to signage and the pump out boat and whatever, but those were projects that staff identified as things that we could maybe do without if you wanted to put the money that was budgeted for them towards the purchase of the property.
I think so. I don't know why we don't need any signage in John's Pass. We've got some.
No, this is the city, welcome to the city of Madeira Beach.
It
But
was
I agree with you. I don't think a digital sign is the way to go anyway,
No.
personally. Because I see the one on the Central and Treasure Island, and just a portion will go out. And it's such a maintenance thing to keep that going. And then if that little square goes out, it's tough to get it fixed, and it's terrible. It looks terrible. And it looks like, well, they don't maintain their sign. And it could happen in an instant, and we don't even know about it. Digital signs are hard to maintain and keep. Especially when
They're difficult to maintain. The only reason that we thought it was a good
there.
idea is, you know, we always borrow those sheriff's department signs when we're having an event or something like that. And they're not the highest quality, and we have so much stuff going on in town, the trailer's like almost there all the time. So it was like, well, let's just put that permanently there in a much nicer fashion. But if you're gonna prioritize your projects, I would think that that's one you could scrap, and maybe we can just have a nice sign there instead. First of all, there ain't a whole lot of room for it where we thought we could put it. It's all FDOT. So we'd have to, get an easement from them, which is probably like, getting an act of Congress or whatever. So we can continue to do that. But, like I said, it's all in regards to how you want to prioritize this.
Well, we can get a banner sign.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love
nice
banners.
one. But-
There you go.
Did you just say banners with Terry Lister all
let me
cranked
tell
up
you.
on caffeine?
Concrete? Oh,
Let me
the
tell you
banner
now.
across, I see that happening.
Here's a guy
Like a
sitting
dream.
right here. We used to have a big banner, was a first-class sign that said John's Pass Seafood Festival and the date. And we got permission from FDOT, and we hung it right across Gulf Boulevard.
Absolutely.
Every year we're up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this guy.
Well,
We need to do
what
that
is the
again.
issue?
We
We have those,
actually have poles on 150th.
Yeah.
At the other side of the bridge. We had an engineering study done on that, to be able to put a banner up there.
you know what we could do? We could put a big
Should've
arc.
been there.
No? No arc over there?
No,
No one got my joke. Terry wasn't listening. We could,
I heard about it. I know it. Hey, my hearing aid's off on that side.
Yeah.
But that's what we should think about doing.
We can.
Make an investment of a nice thing that goes across the boulevard, and then the city's in control, put it away. every year,
Absolutely.
Get it
There,
back
there's
out.
my budget comment. You need to up my banner and sign budget for
Yes.
next year.
I think it just fell
No
apart,
digital
didn't it, guys?
signs, though.
Finally,
Yeah.
we wore it out or something, and we never Oh, yeah. That we did it.
Well, I think there's other ways to address signage, and should we have that was funny. Travis and the mayor and I were having lunch, and it was for the Florida on a Tankful, wasn't it? And the gentleman's like, "But don't you have where is your welcome to Madeira Beach sign? Because I'd like to do the interview in front of that." And Travis and I looked at each other, and it's like, we do not have a welcome to Madeira
Banners,
Beach
got banners
sign.
says welcome.
So let us look into some options in that, and you might want to spend $20,000 and not $120,000 on a sign somewhere in the vicinity. In fact, where we were looking was right as you pull out of the marina, instead of going left or right, if you just drove straight, that's really the only area that we could install it. And so you're already in Madeira Beach, pretty far off the road. In fact, a digital sign would be the only thing that would really catch your eye. So What we can do is maybe have one of our engineers look into possible placement issues, or sites. But at the end of the day, I think you want to save a couple of pennies and just throw it at this property.
That gives us, how much?
Well, if you're putting $300,000 from the one budget, $100,000 from signs, and, you know, what the pump out boat was, so we're almost $500,000 of your almost 1.65, so you're in the $1.1 to $1.2 million range that you'd have to borrow for. Do a 10-year note, pay $125,000 a year annually, and after 10 years, she's paid for.
I'm excited.
What were the
I like the
prices?
beach with no picture.
Me too.
This
You
one?
know one I like? Right here.
You like this one?
Yeah.
On top?
Yeah, that's
This is the one I like.
This is one I like too.
Let me see. Fred.
Oh, okay.
This one here?
Yeah, this one, yeah. Yeah, that's the one I like. I think it looks very classic.
I think you should include one with the picture of the commission.
Really?
You don't?
Well, yeah, we can do it both ways. I look like I'm 3 sheets to the wind in that picture. Don't you think so? That was just right after he got me off that rock.
Yeah, that was.
No wonder I look so goofy. Remember that day you got me off that rock? Me and Terry, I thought we were all going in John's path.
Hear you.
I'm hoping, I like the beach pictures, that is. If y'all like our mugs in there, I'll go for it. Try to scare people away.
This is a nice one, though. It's got the beach all the way up, and people get to point at their house and say, oh, I live right there. Oh, that's just me?
Yeah.
Oh.
See, I think that, Tom brings up a good point. I mean, that you get to put a name with a face, especially if you're going to the conference or, you know, you run into these guys. So I think to put your gorgeous mugs in there somewhere makes sense. You know, if you look at the difference between the half page and the full page, it's a difference of
page makes more
$200.
Last year.
I think that's kind of the assumption we came to last year, and at least gives the impression to all the other cities that, you know, we're an up and coming and bigger than what we used to be.
Did we have a full page last year, Sue?
Yeah, the one on the front there is what you ran.
This one right here.
You can go with the same picture if you want, if we don't want to revisit the,
No, we're
The
only
rock?
going there again.
No, it's not go back to the front.
It could be
Really?
dangerous, right?
How about in front of the banners?
banners. It's all right, we can say no one's still tuned in after 3.5 hours.
I'm in for a full page, pictures.
Picture?
Yeah.
With a, sure, stick with the same picture.
Yeah, we're all still here
I
together.
never look good in pictures. I've tried to get my picture taken off out here.
Not gonna happen.
I thought it was the photographer. I think it's me.
Every photographer I've ever posed for is a bad photographer.
I'm having to start to put the blame back on me now.
We're easy to get
There you
along
go,
with, right,
that-
Travis? Maybe
oh.
it's our way, but well, that's all right.
I know.
We're gonna repeat the past.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's the blue?
We'll just push on to next year.
Right.
So we got a consensus on.
We're gentle
on the blue.
today.
We good?
Yeah, but next year we're gonna have to change. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, next year.
All right.
Change
Next year
is
we'll
good.
change.
Change is good.
All right, okay.
It'll be down when we get on down. With your beach shop.
Yeah, well, sit down
There you
here.
go.
All right. Everybody's good.
The only thing I got was there's a thank you letter submitted by Leo, who owns a business on Madeira Beach. He had a party on Easter Sunday, and he appreciates the city's cooperation when it came to security, and gave us $100 donation. I don't know.
Boy, I'll tell you, the security was good. That sheriff's car sit there all day.
Yeah, I'd like to adjourn, and then we can talk about. Yeah, if we. Let's adjourn, and
Yeah,
I
okay.
can.
Seeing no further business, meeting is adjourned at 5:20.